They suffered stab wounds in the attack and are now being looked after in hospital.
We need to make sure that when people carry out these activities, they feel the full force of the law. People think they can get away with this. The person who firebombed a few weeks ago is out on bail. That's not full force of the law.
This crisis, it's a crisis for all of us. It's not enough to simply say we stand with Jewish communities. Of course we do, but we must show it and act it. And the responsibility lies with each and every one of us, because it is our fight too.
Let's stop importing people from countries where anti-Semitism is the norm. And if our London Mayor, Sadiq Khan, in his infinite wisdom and belief in diversity, thinks that's the sort of diverse view that it's OK to have on the streets of London and the police don't get involved, don't be shocked, and don't you bloody dare claim to be shocked or upset or care about Jewish people being stabbed on the streets of our capital city in broad daylight. This is on you.
You keep getting proven right every single time. Jews are not safe in this country.
Well, absolutely. No one can be surprised or feeling shocked that this happened. No Jew certainly is. I mean, we had Zach Balansky last week saying this was just a perceived threat. Well, we can see this isn't any perception. This is real. This is happening on the streets. This isn't just an anti-Semitic terror attack. This is an attack on Britain, on the Western liberal democracy and values.
The first politician that uses the word shocking, I might just go and throttle him, because this is anything but shocking. It's the most expected thing is almost overdue, if you ask me, because, I mean, I just left Israel last week. I thought it would be the last time we were woken up by explosions, but clearly not.
The Jewish community is our community, and their safety is our safety. And we have to make it absolutely clear, robust, strong leadership, and this has to stop, because otherwise it's almost being normalised, and it's terrifying, and we're sick of it. Enough's enough.
Our plan is a complete step change in how we protect communities, moving beyond piecemeal responses to a sustained nationwide effort, one that ensures that people across the United Kingdom can live freely and without fear.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
And good morning, Ian Collins in for Jezza for the remainder of this week. The sun is still there, by the way. It's calmed down a tad. Now, just when you thought it was safe to go back into the news, he's back. Tony Blair invoking his regular once-a-month intervention into matters that have absolutely nothing to do with him. This time, it's an attack on Keir Starmer, so maybe no bad thing. The former PM says the UK lacks a convincing plan for a long-term future. How do you assess that? What are you making of Blair's remarks on that? And what should our long-term future look like? Meanwhile, the party that says they do have a plan is Reform UK, but all is not tickety-boo in their camp either, as a bit of a public row has kicked off after Robert Jenrick appeared to announce an immigration policy that isn't official. Now, Zia Youssef, who is the official spokesman on these issues, says that Mr Jenrick was wrong and his comments were not reform policy. What are you making of that? This feeds in, of course, to the dire immigration figures out yesterday. 1,000 migrants crossing the Channel over the bank holiday weekend. The sun was shining, the sea was calm. What better way to check into the Four Seasons for free board and lodgings for several decades? And there is a wider issue with a by-election looming, bookmakers changing their odds on how things will pan out, the ongoing battle between Restore and Reform, even Advance as well. Is it inevitable all of these parties will be forced into a merger at some point to gain true success? And if you're a Reform supporter or a Restore supporter or even Advance, what do you make of all those parties coming together? For some, it's a no-brainer. For others, the mere idea drives them absolutely tonto. Thoughts on all of that? Everything you need to know. We'll bring you all the breaking news. 0344 499 1000. Joining us in the studio, despite his appearance on Monday, and I appreciate, Ofcom advised against it, but he's back. Charlie Rowley, former government advisor, special advisor.
Well, yes.
What's the difference between an advisor and a special advisor.
Well, yes, well, the title...
Did you just add the special?
I was...
You're very special.
Well, I never felt particularly special or actually gave any kind of advice, to be perfectly honest with you. I don't think so. It was to Michael Gove at the time, who was perfectly capable of making the decisions himself. But
I'm sure. Do you go into work thinking, what advice can I proffer today?
Yes,
I mean, is that how it works? A special advisor? How? I mean, are you part of a brainstorming thing? How does that work? We have a lot of people on. Former government special advisor. We don't often stop to consider what that entails. And you're telling me pretty much nothing.
Pretty much nothing in my case.
It's a party position, right?
But exactly, it's the political.
So you're not paid for by the taxpayer.
You are, because you are in a government role. You're paid by the taxpayer. You're in the department, the official government department, but you are there to provide the political element of that.
Yes.
So where somebody might have a particular problem that does relate to government business, it's not just the hard and fast campaigning or slogans that you'd expect from a political party, but where the civil service isn't able to maybe help or support the minister in that way because it's deemed too political, or you have to insert the political element to what the government is doing, that's when you are there as a sort of the crossover to do that.
So would you go into work, so Michael goes in his office, you're in your office, would you drop him an email saying, did you call him Michael, Secretary of State, Minister? Do you want to pop in? I've got some advice for you. I mean, did it work like that?
We had, Michael was very good because as a former journalist here at the Times and now back as editor of The Spectator, I think he sort of ran his ship almost like an editorial. So every morning you'd have a meeting, the whole team would be in, it would be brainstorming what the issues of the day, what do we need to get through, what did people from the department put in his box last night that he needed to sign off, or what issues there were. He was very good at the turning around the box, actually. It was a daily thing. He took it very seriously. But for me, it would be more sort of the, before he went to the House of Commons and he was doing a speech, or it was his question times in the Commons, he'd have all the official briefing and all the...
What position was he in at the stage?
So I was with him in a couple of departments. We started off in the Department for Environment, then we moved to the Cabinet Office, and the Cabinet Office was where it really got serious.
Well, because you're attached to Downing Street, essentially, aren't you?
Absolutely, and it was during the Brexit No Deal preparation, so Boris was Prime Minister, and there was the threat of not getting a deal after he'd sort of succeeded from Theresa May, and then after the Brexit years, it was straight into COVID. So, that was a department that was really at the coalface of it.
The common denominator in all of these events is Charlie Rowley.
It's all my fault. Yes, it's essentially what we're concluding.
Rowley. When things fall apart, the only man left standing is Rowley and his dossier of advice.
Exactly, yes. Yeah, no,
dodgy dossier carried around. Who's the next victim?
Exactly. Well, if you want to know where we ended up, it was the Department of Levelling Up, which no one ever speaks of now. That was a flash in the pan department.
You still in touch with your former boss?
I am, as it goes. Yes, not frequently, because he's got a big job to do, and
true.
But we catch up, and annually the team gets together, and I see him at events, and I say hello.
Well, we need a lot of your advice this morning. We certainly got a lot of it on Monday when Charlie was last with us, which I'm going to have to just relive this moment slightly to make it make sense to those that weren't listening on Monday. Lainey got in touch with us because she was living in a static caravan where it was, I think, 48 degrees inside the caravan, and that day she was panicked because she had to work from home. Charlie's advice was leave the caravan because it's cooler outside. But we then had an avalanche of advice on how to keep cool. Lainey did get back in touch.
Oh.
Well, shall I say family got back in touch.
Oh.
Yeah, it's bad news.
Oh, no. Am I in trouble?
No, Lainey didn't. She did. Sorry to announce the demise of Lainey. She's fine.
Didn't make it through the day.
She did go to a public building with ice pops and I think a bucket of water and a wet towel.
Oh, brilliant.
So she took all the advice.
I thought you were going to say a public house she went to afterwards.
Well, that's where I would have been,
yes,
frankly. But it did lead us, and I don't even know how this began. I think it started because yesterday I had to do a fish transfer.
I beg pardon?
I had to transfer my fish, or my little boy's fish, from a tank into a bigger tank, OK? Long story short, there is a method to this because you don't want the water to be too cold or too hot. It's going to freak them out. They get a fish heart attack, and that's not good. Got them all in there. And then as I was about to go, great, job done. I've got some new little plants in the new tank. When he gets back, he's going to be really delighted. And I see in the old tank 4 tiny baby fish that didn't exist before. Oh. I mean, so small, they were almost granular. I mean, they were absolutely... I thought, no, what do you do? He doesn't know he's got baby fish. Do I just leave them in the old tank and the Lord will do his work? Or do I try and catch 4 minute fish? 2 hours later, and a net in my hand, I transferred those little uns into the big... I hope they survive, because I don't know what sort of shock that would be to something that's only been alive for about an hour.
Is this the kind of advice you're expecting me to, as a former special advisor,
yes,
that I was to opine on?
You don't work in the agriculture department.
Oh, no, yes.
What it got us thinking, because Christian, our producer, sort of mentioned about pets in this weather. We were talking about guinea pigs and stuff like that. If you're in a hutch, or you're...
What are you doing in the hutch?
Then get out the hutch. That's the advice. Get out. You've got no place being in there. If you're in a hutch, and you're, I mean, what do you do as a guinea pig in 35 degrees in a wooden hutch? A rabbit. Has your gerbil ever overheated? I mean, I don't know.
How's your hamster?
Don't even go there. So yes, we're happy to take some pet advice because it's still, I mean, the temperature's gone down a bit. It's still going to be hot for the next few days. I think tomorrow gets hotter again and then it cools a bit, but we're going to be in the sort of mid-20s for the next few days. Cats, dogs, some dogs freak out like Billy-O when it's too hot. They don't know what to do.
Well, it's a good question because I am. I now live by myself, and I have been in the market for either a cat or a dog. I do want a dog, but I think maybe the flat's probably a bit. It might be a bit small, but I've obviously been thinking about how you would look after it, and I've seen a lot of dogs with sort of people put wet tea towels around them just to keep them a little bit cool, which I think could be good advice. But we're
back to the towel again.
Oh,
This is just the same advice, really, but just transposed to the animal world.
Yes, yeah.
But I hadn't really thought, because my neighbours have got guinea pigs, and sometimes we fed them when they've been on holiday, and I never considered that. Yesterday they would have been in. I mean, it would have been 40 degrees in that hutch. I don't even know if they're still with us.
Well.
How do you dampen down your dachshund? That's the question. How do you cool your cat? How do you deheat your hamster? We could go on.
But the fish...
And why do you not have to put sun cream on a dog? Factor 50. Yes, my best Scooby-Doo.
That was very good.
Do you know, we once had, we interviewed the guy, Don Messick, who did the voice of Scooby-Doo. And he did the voice of Dick Dastardly, Muttley, Huckleberry Hound, all of these things. And he did us a voice. Ian? As a and people would say, "Oh, who did you get to do your Scooby-Doo voice?" Scooby-Doo actually did our voice, and we lost those voices. You'd still play them now and get a... I mean, I reckon if you'd have... Because we'd interviewed him. If you'd have had to pay paid him to do your voice... What would that have cost, Christian? To pay the voice of Scooby-Doo to do 50 grand at least, you'd have had to pay a voiceover artist of that magnitude to do a genuine... I don't know where my Scoobies are.
No. It must have been quite typecast, though, that poor chap, if he was just doing all the dogs, by the sounds of things. If it was Scooby-Doo and...
Very mean, Charlie.
Sorry, for 50... Yeah, for 50... I mean, don't knock it. I'm not knocking it. I'm not knocking it.
He didn't do... Because the other guy, Mel Blanc, wasn't it, that did Daffy Duck and Bugs Bunny. So there was Mel Blanc and Don Messick. They were slightly different camps, as it were. And, but yeah...
Well,
so that's the only Scooby-Doo anecdote you're going to get today, kids. And why did dogs not wear sun cream, even on their nose?
I don't know. Do they have to?
You're a disappointment, Charlie.
Is there some special... Is there some sort of cooling... I mean, you can... I know that you can get things like dog ice cream, specific pet ice cream, which helps cool them down, I imagine. But do they have to wear any other cream?
What clothes do you put your dog in when it's... This one comes from Zarina, who says, my little cat suffered in this heat, so I plan to put a towel... Here we go. A towel in the freezer. Don't put the cat in the freezer. I mean, it will work, but only to a point. So I put a towel in the freezer, bring it out, and encourage him to sit on it. That's great. A towel in the freezer. Sorry. Why? To make it cold, obviously.
A wet towel, and then it freezes, I'm assuming, or just...
Well, you don't freeze
too
much. It comes out like something Tracy Emin produced. You just want a basic... Yeah, you put it in for a while.
But it would be quite a firm towel, wouldn't it? So it'd be quite uncomfortable to sit on afterwards, I would have thought.
Apparently, Mark tells me that in my ear just then, you can buy a gel mat. Do you put the mat in the fridge or something? So you put it in the freezer, and then the cat sits upon said gel mat. This comes in from Joanna in Salisbury. Ian and Charlie, guinea pig / rabbit. 2 lots of advice. Empty bottles of lemonade or other drink. Peroni. Fill with water and put in the freezer. Put in a cage, replace it as it defrosts. So you... Empty bottles of lemonade, or just an empty bottle. Oh, God. I assume you put water in it. Oh yeah, fill with water. Sorry, put in the freezer. Put in the cage and replace as it defrosts. What do they do? Do they lay upon it? Is that the idea? My old dogs were flat out with a fan. Sun cream for dogs' noses, but watch out for white short fur dogs. Beasts.
What on earth for?
I don't know. White short fur dogs, are they particularly susceptible to it?
Oh, are they quite sort of... If they're short... Oh, but short fur. I thought they might be sort of... Well, that's long fur. Which it's obviously not
really.
Clues in the name, Charlie.
There is a medium possibility, apparently.
Yes.
Jules says, good morning, Ian and Charlie. You two are great together. You think? Keeping a hamster cool is easy as they love cucumber, so we'll eat and store small slices to stay hydrated. Have a good day. Thank you, Jules, for that.
That's good. Yes,
And, of course, your hamster... can lob half a ton of that stuff in its own cheeks, can't it? It's very... And they do... Nobody ever told a hamster how ridiculous they look doing this, but it's amazing, because I had a hamster as a kid before the accident, and she fell off her climbing frame.
Oh.
Full concussion, you know. So it was literally... It was like... I don't know, if you think of the Hunchback of Notre Dame, but a sort of hamster version... That's how she continued.
Oh.
She was fine, just wonky. But yes, but with these massive cheeks of food. So I suppose if it's sunny weather, hot weather, it's probably quite good. Ian says both Scooby-Doo and Shaggy were cowardly and inept crime fighters. The only one who showed any promise was Velma. You were ahead there on Velma.
I was, yes. Well, it's bringing back childhood memories.
Well, Velma was slightly annoying, wasn't she, as the character? Because, like, Fred and Daphne were definitely... There was something going on there, but it was never said out loud on a kid's primetime TV show. And then it was Scooby and Shaggy, where Shaggy just liked to smoke a big one every now and again, and, you know, Scooby just liked those massive sandwiches. So Velma was the one that was on it, but she was very studious and bookish, was our Velma.
Yes, they kind of represented every kid in the class, didn't they? Fred, you know, like the cool kids, and then Velma, who was the sort of the...
It was by far, for me, growing up, Scooby-Doo was like Premier League as cartoons, and Tom and Jerry as well. They were absolutely... Nothing came close to those things.
You only ever saw her legs, didn't you, in Tom and Jerry?
You did.
The mother's, the homeowner, I'm assuming she was.
Yes, I don't know who she was. I don't know. Was she the housekeeper? I don't know. I always thought she was the housekeeper one. And then when she saw the mouse, she screamed, and then Tom sprang into action and suddenly, you know, got hit by a Bablington racket, and his face was the shape of a racket, and then an anvil dropped on top of him, and he somehow skulked off with his little paws. Extraordinary.
I mean, health and safety gone mad, isn't it? You know, today you wouldn't be able to get away with that now.
Absolutely. Peter says you dampen down your dachshund by soaking it down unless you want a hot dog. Do you say dash hound or dachshund?
Dachshund, is it? And is that different to a... It is different to a Dachshund, isn't it? Because is a Dachshund...
A Datsun, that's a car.
Is it?
Yeah. A Datsun. Datsun is a car.
Right.
The Nissan is the... I think Nissan is, yeah, what Datsun used to be. I don't know how we got onto this.
There you go.
This is a current affairs show, kids. Car or dog? Which one do you fancy in the hot weather? So there you go. Yeah, we will continue with some advice for keeping your pet cool. There was genuine, serious public information imperative going on here. I would also, on a more serious note, like your views on a couple of things. I mentioned, well, it's sort of a row. I'm sure if you're Richard Tice or Nigel Farage, you're probably thinking it's not really a row. Robert Jenrick said something, and it's just not the official policy. That is it. And this was the idea that if you are a foreign national living in social housing, he claimed that you would not exclusively face deportation if you lived in council accommodation. Zia Youssef said that is not the party's position. As the person responsible for our deportation plan, I want to ensure people to know where we stand. Now, the difficulty with that, you might live in... You could have lived here for 30 years and worked and still work and pay taxes. I was talking to a taxi driver, Persian guy, yesterday, picked me up from the station on the way home. And he was saying, you know, he said, I'm fascinated when people talk about, you know, foreigners and, you know, taking money out the state. He said, I'm one of the few cab drivers on the rank working today, and yet, you know, I'm diligently doing this. Obviously, he's getting paid for it. And he said, I pay taxes for years in this country. Now, he would be entitled to the NHS. If he's got kids, they would be entitled to family allowance, whatever it's called these days. And if he found himself in social housing, after 30 years of living here, should he then be deported if he fell on hard times? I mean, that's the question that Reform have got to answer, isn't it?
Absolutely. And I think, you know, look, in terms of the policy, I think, you know, this is maybe where Robert Jenrick, who has been in government before, he's been a government minister, I mean, he was the immigration minister, even though he is obviously a fully signed up member to the Reform and what they stand for in terms of their rhetoric and their determination to get immigration down, get illegal immigration down in particular, and to deport people that shouldn't be here in the country. But when it was into the specifics, I think Robert Jenrick gave, during that particular interview that he gave on the Sunday, he was slightly more nuanced and sort of, I think, was probably taking that kind of element into account where, yes, OK, if you do come into the country illegally, for example, or if you are then given social housing, if you're approved status, but if you go on to commit crimes, then of course you shouldn't be able to be here and you would be deported. But I think Robert was trying to, obviously, with his government background experience, being slightly more nuanced, even trying to stay on message, whereas Reform's then actual shadow Home Secretary, Zia Youssef...
I said, no, this is not the policy.
Yes, it was, which was interesting because even if Zia wants to be very clear about the message and clear about Reform's policies, no bad thing, doing it in a quite public way, where I know those two might have a bit of history.
He actually, he said... Robert Jenrick was wrong. This is not Reform policy. So you're saying that could have been done in a softer way?
Oh, totally. I mean, if you take into...
that happens all the time, doesn't it? When a government minister goes on Koonsberg or something, they say something and then it's not quite policy. Yeah. Everybody loses their mind.
Absolutely. And, you know, it would have been maybe slightly better, maybe for, you know, Zia to have had a conversation with Rob. It seems like that they haven't from that tweet. But, you know, for Zia to have a conversation with Rob and then clarify maybe later on in the day, no, Rob was absolutely right when he talked about X, Y, Z, but just to be absolutely clear the fundamentals are ABC. Okay. So you find the agreement
there would have
rather
been
than...
Yeah, so it was quite blunt in the way that he sort of told him off, essentially, very public.
Exactly, because what I took away from that, just finally, is that you've got, as they're presenting themselves as a government in waiting, they feel that they are the official opposition. If the polls are, even though they're ahead in the polls, that they could come into government. You've got a public spat between your shadow chancellor and your shadow home secretary. That is not a good look.
That's not a good look. Dave in Aberdeen says, morning Ian, another slow news day, I see. Do you know, the irony of that is, this is absolutely the irony, Dave, in Aberdeen, is that there's actually more news around today than there has been all week. Because we've got the Channel Crossing stuff, we've got the reform story, we've got Tony Blair intervening yet again. That's subject to whether Restore, Reform, Advance should get to club together, become one outfit, and that would do the kind of damage that people who support those parties want it to do. So ironically, there's more news more news around today than there has been, and yet we've descended into cartoon chaos, Datsuns, Dachshunds, and how to keep your pet cool in the sun. It's a public service, really, isn't it?
Well, it's the home of free speech.
All of that, and the home of common sense as well. 0344 499 1000. Drop us a voice note on that, any of those subjects, if you want to get involved. Or you can message, of course, 87222. Charlie Rowley's still with us. Sorry about that. We'll continue talking to Charlie, get some more views from him in a couple of moments right here on Talk.
The Crown is facing its gravest test in decades, and the royalty from Talk is your front row seat. With royal reputations under pressure and probing questions about public trust, we unpack every twist and revelation with the biggest names in the business. From the throne room at Buckingham Palace to a mansion in Montecito, we follow every royal ripple. Never miss a moment of The Crown in crisis. Subscribe to the royalty from Talk on the app or wherever you get your podcasts.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. 28 minutes after 6 o'clock. It is the home of Common Sense. Ian Collins in for Jezza on The Breakfast Show. This comes in from Chris, who says, when I was younger, I thought a goldfish was too basic, so I got an eel as a pet instead. Nothing wrong with that. 5 minutes into ownership, and the idiot somehow got itself wedged in the tiny window of the fish tank castle, like it was escaping prison. Ended up filming a full rescue mission where we had to smash the castle while it was still underwater to free him. I sent the clip to You've Been Framed. They rejected it. as being too graphic. Apparently, eel extraction surgery before watershed TV is frowned upon.
Wow.
I love that story, and I'm assuming the eel did rather well.
Well, yes. You're going to have to do something else to get your 250 quid if you've been framed. Aren't going to pay out for that.
Yes, I'd imagine it was probably quite an elongated clip as well. I mean, those clips usually were sort of 30 seconds max, weren't they?
Elongated.
Sorry, I wasn't meant to...
Oh,
yes,
I see. I thought that's
intended. I mean, Chris was probably sending in 7 minutes worth of his best eel rescue. That would have been half the show.
Show reel.
Reel, yes.
Yes, they all
Joanna clarifies, white fur dogs get sunburn the same as dogs' noses do. Thank you, Joanna, for that. Morning, both. I keep my Jackapoo Flotsy. What's a Jack? Is that Jack Russell and a poodle?
I'm assuming so, yeah. A cockapoo or...
Well, yeah, but a cockapoo is already a mix, isn't it? Of a poodle and a cocker spaniel. So a Jackapoo would be a poodle and a... Unless you've thrown in the... Well, I'm asking were there 3 dogs involved in this process? I don't know. Anyway, Annie says, I keep my Jackapoo Flossie cool by wrapping a freezer block in a towel so she can sleep against it, says Annie, in Shoreham by Sea. So that sounds like the best advice, doesn't it? Whether it's a bottle of frozen water or a towel, then let your pet lay on it and the pet can decide for itself. If the pet's hot enough, it will go for it, right?
Yeah.
I would have thought
You'd
so.
imagine so, yeah. Pets can, they are, and animals are instinctive, aren't they?
Indeed. This comes from Sharon, who says, morning to you both. I left my... I haven't even read it. I have no idea what's coming. I left my 2 budgies and some fish in the conservatory. I thought they would be okay. That's the beginning. But it was a very hot start of spring. I came home, my budgies were on the bottom of the cage on their backs and the fish were cooking. My neighbour revived the budgies with a straw. That's beautiful.
That's, well, fair play, yes, yeah.
I mean, that's kind of resuscitation but via the conduit of an old straw. You wouldn't want one of those McDonald's straws, would you? Way too big for a budgie. Save that for an owl.
Those pet owls, that we regularly hear about.
Menace, those things.
So what would have happened to the budgie then? Would it not just...
I would imagine they just... They dehydrated, they overheated, they couldn't cope anymore, so they just went on their backs, feet in the air. I'm slightly making up Sharon's story now, but something of that nature. I don't think there was any pushing of the chest. I think you have to be very delicate doing... Maybe a little gentle squeeze would do it. But apparently the straws revived the budgies. I'd have been panicked, and I'd imagine Sharon was too. A happy ending, although we don't know the plight of the fish.
No, well, if they were cooking, I think you said they were, or you never know what's the...
Susan says you should put sunscreen on the ears of white cats. We had one, we didn't know this. He lost both ears to cancer. Animals do suffer with the effects of the sun, especially pink-nosed cats and dogs and white ones. It's no laughing matter, says Mary. Your face, Charlie. Charlie's very serious. It is no laughing matter, and was the cancer then brought on by the sun? And I assume from what Mary is saying, that's true.
Well, there's obviously a running thing if you're obviously a white furred cat or a short-haired, white-haired dog, then obviously that's a thing, which I didn't know about at all. So obviously pets that have...
I didn't know anything about the white dog thing. George in Leicester says, reference the Datsun. As a fan of early Nissans, I owned 7 in total. That's how reliable they are. Late Datsuns had a small badge under the Datsun name saying, by Nissan. So to sort of reintroduce the new brand, I guess. They then became Nissan. Nissan was Datsun's design team.
Oh, right.
My mate's mum and dad had a Datsun, and it was a really cool... They had a brand new one as well, which was quite unusual then. And it was quite... I can't remember what it was called, Datsun or whatever it was. But they are no longer. But you don't really see second-hand ones going down the road either very often.
These are the cars.
These are the cars, not the dogs, yeah. So we're on to cars now,
yeah.
Simon in Durham, here's a fun fact for you. Did you know this, that Shaggy from Scooby-Doo was a Vietnam vet?
No.
Yes.
Didn't know that at all. No.
Did you know that, Mark?
How do we know?
No wonder they lost. I mean, good lord. They're the likes of Shaggy on the front line. No one's going to run away from him, are they? I assume he means a veteran rather than a vet. Yes.
Reviving badges for the next episode.
That for the next episode, indeed. Tony Blair. Now, have you ever met Tony Blair?
I've never met him, and I've only seen him once in person, and he's a lot shorter than what I imagined him to be.
Shorter?
Yes, yeah. For some reason, I expected him to be, your average sort of 6 foot, but he looked a bit shorter.
That's interesting.
Not quite Rishi Sunak short, but
No, I never met Tony Blair or interviewed him or anything, and I find that kind of bit of a missing part of my own jigsaw in the politics stuff. When I went into the press gallery, Gordon Brown was Prime Minister. So, and I met him a number of times at different things, and then subsequently the others. But although not this one, although I did see Keir Starmer at the lift here a little while back, wearing a very nice suit. We know where he gets those from, and a pair of Nike trainers.
Was he going down in the lift?
He was waiting for a lift with his special advisor, and he was very angry that the lift was taking a long time.
Oh, right.
Yeah. Smashed the place up.
Well, yeah. Well, would have had a bit more respect.
This was just before he became Prime Minister. But anyway, Blair's we mentioned Blair, of course, because he's intervened. And he does this once. I know he's got his own, I'm about to say his own empire, his own... what's it called? Institute, the Tony Blair Institute.
For global change.
Global change, yeah. And we sometimes have the guys on from there, and they talk a lot about climate and other sort of global things. And that is their thing. And, we're a democracy, and some people believe in the sort of global super dream, not in a conspiracy way, that the world, the Western world certainly, rubs along better when it's globally connected than it does if you are kind of a slightly more autonomous creature. And of course that does divide the room somewhat, because the word globalist has become a pejorative, and it's used and sometimes used for nefarious reasons to mean something else. But so that is Blair's position. So once a month, it seems, there's a big headline that Blair has intervened on something, and this time he said it's a broadside attack on Keir Starmer and Labour's direction, warning the party is drifting too far left and lacks a convincing long-term plan for Britain. He argues changing the leader alone won't solve Labour's deeper identity crisis. Because in fairness to Blair, he reinvented Labour, of course. There's no doubt about that. And Wan, is that not the past tense of one? Should be. He wan 3 elections. And, the landslide nature of the first one is there for, in the history books in 1997. I think if Andy Burnham wins the by-election and becomes the Prime Minister, and I've got a further question. Don't let me let you leave. Don't leave, I should say. Or don't let me let you leave without me asking this question. But I think Andy Burnham won't go to the left. I don't think he will. I think he'll use that to get in, and then I think he will govern in a more Blairite way. That is my sense.
Yeah, the whole thing's pretty interesting, because it wasn't so long ago where I think Tony Blair was advising Keir Starmer, and there are reports in the margins of the papers that he was trying to influence and trying to help, and they did an interview once at that's Future for Britain, which I think for people watching, it was just on the screens there. So I think Tony Blair was a sort of trying to be helpful, but now coming out with this over 5,000 word sort of eviscerating report about what he feels the Labour Party are doing wrong and the direction or lack of direction. Yep. And targeting particular people. It's pretty extraordinary stuff. I think the message that Tony Blair has set out is absolutely the right one. But it's the messenger that people are attacking because of obviously his faults in the past, yes. The Iraq War, and just I think the general irritating of people taking the Labour Party to the centre or to the right, as people on the left might have you.
Yeah, well, that is a very powerful contingent. The left of the Labour Party is arguably more powerful than the right of the Labour Party, particularly with the 2024 intake.
But the essence of it, people will talk about, as Tony Blair has, a lurch to the left puts Britain at risk. Well, it does, because you're talking about issues that a lot of people don't care about. When people talk about the centre, elections are won in the centre, I think that is just basically common sense. That is what mainstream Britain wants. So it shouldn't be left wing or right wing,
Yeah.
to talk about immigration. If immigration is a problem in this country, then it just has to be tackled.
But I would also argue that the centre is intrinsically to the right, if that makes sense.
Yes.
So in that centre, the thinking would favour more the right than the left, because I always sense that sort of centre-right thinking is instinctive rather than sort of building a bullet point list of I believe this, I think this, I subscribe to that. Just your basic, raw, primal human instinct takes you slightly to the right, not to the left.
Yeah, absolutely. Which is why, actually, I'm not sure about Andy Burnham. I think he might, whatever he might feel is right, I think he has got to go somewhat to the left a bit of Starmer.
But is that to get in? Once he's in, has he...
But when you've got backbenchers who are...
And there's lots of them.
And there's lots of them who are clearly irritated about the current status quo, and you've already unseated potentially one Prime Minister, I think they will want to see red meat for their constituencies.
Yes, that's true.
And if it's not being delivered by the new guy that's come in, then I think they'll be even more irritated, and it could be quite damaging.
Very quickly, Cliff in Berkshire says, morning Ian and Charlie, it pains me to say, but Blair has a point. There are too many men with big egos in politics today, each pushing to be the top dog. Yeah, anyone that says to you on that front bench, I don't want to be the top dog, is telling you a huge whopper. 0344 499 1000. You drop us a voice note on that number, on that issue, and any of the others that we've discussed as well. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
It does help if you plug in the microphone. Honestly, Charlie, you had one job. Plug in the microphones when you come here.
This is sabotage.
I know what's happening here. Start off all cheeky and having a bit of a giggle about staying cool in the summer. Billy Romsey says, morning Ian and Charlie, Reform, Conservatives and other small parties on the right say they all want to make Great Britain great again. So to achieve this, they must put the country first and forget about their individual points of view. Otherwise, Labour will win the next general election. And we're seeing this really play out in Makerfield, aren't we? With quite obvious concerns based on the polling we've seen for reform. Because this would have been apparently a two-horse race. And even that headline is, students of politics will acknowledge that's quite interesting in itself, bearing in mind, reform didn't exist half an hour ago, and there they are as the main threat to a historic Labour seat. So that's quite incredible in itself. But then Restore come along, and according to some polling, you've got Labour on 43 or 44%, Reform on, I think it was 40, and Restore on 7%, which would be enough to completely scupper it, based just solely on that little snapshot, to scupper it for Reform. And of course, it's understandable. Many say, well, why don't those parties come together? Because between the two of you, you could absolutely annihilate Labour. And I get that. But of course, I mean, they always say, don't upset a Reform supporter. But man alive, if you really want trouble, don't upset a Restore supporter, because those guys, and it's a democracy, they're absolutely entrenched in what they believe is the real right-wing feel and policies, as distinct from Reform, who they see as a kind of Tory, you know, Mark II kind of thing.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, and it's going to be hugely critical in this situation, because many people, this isn't a normal everyday by-election. And look, you know, people will say that, you know, the people of Makerfield, they can, you know, they are perfectly sensible people. They will make up their mind regardless of how many candidates are on the ballot or what political parties put up a candidate. So they will know the situation better than anyone. But you're right, the temptation, if you're maybe not necessarily you know, tuned into the Labour Party, you might vote Green, for example, where, you know, votes that the Labour Party might want to garner, because of the seriousness of this by-election, they will lose to the Greens, or lose votes to the Greens, I should say. And just similarly, you know, Reform that want to take the seat to prevent Andy Burnham just becoming the MP and a shoe-in to become PM, some of those votes might be lost to Restore other parties. So, you know, making it a very binary choice between, do you want Labour Burnham coming in, who could go on to become the PM, or do you want to stop that by having a Reform candidate who is the nearest challenger, given the last general election and the polling that we've seen? It's fascinating stuff.
Are you a Restore supporter, Reform supporter? Would you like to see a merging of the two? I know it's not an entirely new question, but it's began to develop new prominence, I suppose, as a result of this, the Makerfield by-election. These are the candidates standing on June the 18th. Jake Austin for the Liberal Democrats, Count Binface for the Count Binface Party, Andy Burnham, the Labour Party, Dan Clark, the Libertarian Party, John Dyer, Independent, Ed Gemmell, Climate Party, Paul Gould, Independent, Alan Howling Lord Hope, the official monster raving loony party, Robert Kenyon, Reform UK, Robert Pownall, Protect the Wild, Rebecca Shepherd, Restore Britain, Sarah Wakefield, the Green Party, Peter Ward, Rejoin the EU, and Michael Winstanley, the Conservative Party. Does that list get bigger every day, doesn't it? It's like there were 3 of them on there about 10 minutes ago. There's about 23 now. Yes. Just before we go to a quick pause, because we've got lots of stuff to get through, Charlie, and we've not got long left before you have to leg it from this these shores. Chris in Greenham says, Ian and Charlie, a colleague of mine at work insists that his goldfish had a heart attack, God knows how he knew, and was jump-started back to life with a 9-volt battery and a couple of wires. Now, can I just say, firstly, we do not, at any level, recommend this. I mean, I've watched a lot of episodes of Casualty over the years. Not for many years. ER, you know, I saw Clooney go heroic on patients. But I never see anyone jumpstart a goldfish. So we don't do it, by the way. Anyway, Chris also says, I also have an age when every other taxi was a Datsun Sunny. That's the word I was going to... It was a Datsun Sunny. That was the car.
I don't know what they look like. I can't picture them.
You don't even see... So like, every now and again, you know, you're going down the road and you're on the motorway and you see an old... what were they called? Not a llama. What was that? What was that? Larder. That's a larder, not a llama. Sorry.
If you see a llama down
There's a llama. I once called the police. Because there was a horse on the M25. On the M20.
Wow.
Like literally galloping in the direction, towards the direction of traffic on the M20.
Oh, gosh.
But it wasn't a llama. I don't know what happened to the horse. I'm sure it was fine and it was cool. Never seen a llama knowingly anywhere. A larder, yes. You'll see a larder once in a while that's about 40 years old. Just some old boy in there just mooching along. You do see old cars. Never a Datsun for some bizarre reason.
I'm useless with cars, I'm afraid. I'm sorry.
Okay, we won't ask Charlie back, will we?
Yeah.
Especially on the motoring hour, which starts tomorrow. Charlie Rowley is with us. We are pausing briefly. I think we've got Kinsey with us next, haven't we? Is Kinsey with us next? Or have I just made that up? She's not with us next. I just invented that Kinsey was with us next, which gives us more room to talk about the other stuff. Looking forward to that. Don't go anywhere. 0344 499 1000. This is Talk.
Good morning to you. This is Tour the Home of Common Sense with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. Just breaking news in the last couple of moments. Extraordinary news. Not just that the police have arrived at the Sandringham estate where Prince Andrew, as was now Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, is currently living since being thrown out of the Windsor estate. The police have arrested Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. It's an extraordinary revelation. And certainly what's been contained in the Epstein files as released in the last few weeks. It's his 66th birthday today. What a birthday present that is.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. We've got everything from politics to pets. It's curious the way there's no other radio station anywhere on planet Earth that could offer you this cross-section of news versus the stuff that is just sometimes a little bit fun. And why not give a bit of prominence to both? But I mean, we don't have sort of heat waves that often. I appreciate not all the country has had a heat wave, although most of it has had pretty much a heaty time, as I think it's described. And it's just thrown up some other subjects and keeping your pet cool, which actually I think Christian, I just told the story this morning in the office of my fish dilemma yesterday. Have I rescued 4 little tiny baby fish? Which got us into the subject of, you know, what do pets do in the hot weather? If you're a guinea pig stuck in a hutch or a rabbit, I mean, can they survive that? Are they built to survive that? Say again, Mark? Oh, the special ointment, apparently.
Oh.
Ointment for... Oh, yeah. It's not my gag, it's Mark's. Oh, the look that Charlie just threw Mark. If looks could kill.
Don't give up that board too soon back there.
Sarah says, we keep our cats cool and hydrated with tuna ice cubes and frozen prawns. Oh, I bet they love that. I'd like to say cats know how to keep themselves cool, but they insist on laying outside when it's cooler inside, so I gave up trying to keep them in and just throw frozen fish products out instead. You'd think they'd know, wouldn't you? You'd think they'd go, it's a bit hot here.
Yeah, but I think they do know, and I think they do like a bit of heat as well.
Yeah.
But I think they'll know when they are overcooking and when they are becoming too hot.
Yes, if a cat is what's known as self-cooking in the cat arena, it tends to know about it. I stumbled across... So we have... There's kind of a bit of a side point to this story. And my other half, not me, has an allotment. So we are, I'm not kidding you, the youngest people that ever had an allotment. I'm not exactly 20 myself. So, and she's younger than me. So she took up this allotment years and years ago, and she goes back to it each year, does strawberries and bits and pieces. So I went down there the other day to pick her up, and I took the dog with me for a bit of a walk. And the dog was attacked by a cat, and I mean attacked. This cat went, you know, when a cat goes nuts and its legs go up and it's snarling, and it took a swipe at Bella, the little cockapoo. Scratched her nose, blood all over her little fur and everything. And this cat, who I then discovered, seriously, that so it's the allotment cat, although it belongs to somebody, but it sees the allotment as its territory, which I think is rather greedy, frankly, because it's quite a big allotment. I mean, OK, have the carrot patch or something, you know. Be the master of the domain of the cabbages, but not the whole thing. I mean, it's an acre's worth of allotments, for God's sake. This cat is called Chucky. I'm not kidding you. And I went there yesterday because my mother said, "Oh, could you go down and water the?" So I drove down in the car, go through the gate, and who's laying in front of the track I want to drive down?
Chucky.
Chucky. Chucky.
Waited for you.
Not moving either. And I thought, Chucky dead.
Oh.
That was my first thought. Chucky's no more. Chucky has either had a fight with the dog and didn't win. Apparently this cat does it with all dogs. Or it's just overheated. And I went out. So I had to get out the car to try and move the cat. Got out the car, the cat's there, and then it kind of rolls over as if to go, yeah, stroke me. And I thought, don't keep giving. You just nearly killed my dog last week. So I did manage to edge it away from the centre of the track.
And was Bella okay?
She was a bit shocked. Yeah, she was a bit shocked. And it's not nice to see a dog with a bleed, even though it was a scratch. You know, like how a cat... Have you ever had a cat scratch?
Yes.
It can be quite painful, a cat scratch. So it was just that, but she was a bit freaked out by it. And she's a dog. If she wanted to, even though she's a cockapoo, the jaw bite of a dog is far superior. The dog, she could have done more damage to the cat, but of course cats go for it, don't they?
Yeah.
They're sort of these ninja-like things. Their limbs are all over the place. They disjoint. They fly around. They twist in the air, double piking as they come back down. You know, they do all sorts of shenanigans.
Oh,
filthy beasts. Danny in Gloucester says, I once owned a Datsun Nissan. Yes, dual name Cherry. It was 3-ton metal brown. What a machine! They were big in those days. This from. I think it's Poita, do I pronounce that, in Hounslow, which sort of sounds like a kind of vaguely Eastern European Peter. I don't know. Anyway, he says, I once got stuck in an M3 traffic jam due to a white swan who used it as a landing strip, lightly confusing it with a waterway. So the swan, its bearings were all out.
Oh, wow.
Thought it was a river.
A solitary swan, just sort of...
landed on the motor. Yeah, it's funny stuff that happens, isn't it? Ian and Charlie, Max says, Ian and Charlie, my daughter had her Nissan for years and christened it Mabel. Her first car, Metro, was called Primrose. Does anyone else name their car? I normally have a very dim view of people who name their cars, but I'm actually quite pleased that Mags's daughter had quite nice names. You ever named a car?
Well, I've only had one car
since the incident. Which you no longer have.
Which I no longer have. It was a Fiat Punto.
I think we should since you're no longer allowed to have. I think that perhaps gets closer.
Yes,
but anyway, so it was a what? A Fiat Punto.
Well, yes, I don't drive anymore, but I get driven. As you can imagine.
Yes.
The lofty heights of a special advisor.
Yeah, of course. But it didn't have a name.
I called it Harry.
What is the Mark knows a lot about driving, okay? He knows more than any of us in this room about driving. Have you ever named a car, Mark? No, of course you haven't. Anyone who knows and loves a vehicle and an engine and knows what's under a bonnet does not name a car.
No.
When do you walk out and go, morning, Kenneth? Do you actually say that, or how does it work?
Well, I think there's just...
Hi, Harry, how's it going?
Well, there's just something about, you know, if you're driving or if something feels as though it's going wrong, or say that your tank was running a bit low and you thought, oh, right, God, I've just got to get from A to B, or I've just got to get to the petrol station. You say, come on, Harry, just get us there. Just come on, get us there.
Yeah.
And you equate it to someone. You sort of...
Was Harry involved in the incident?
Harry.
Come on, Harry.
Harry has new owners now.
Yes. I mean, it sounds like a Stephen King novel. Sort of slightly crossed with hello. Listen, Harry, I will say this only once. Charlie, thank you. We've hit the clock already.
Oh, no.
Charlie Rowley, that's the last time you'll ever hear Charlie on... Or you're actually doing Plank of the Week this week, so it should be fun. Thank you to Charlie. More from you on the way. 0344 499 1000. Let's get the news at 7.
Got some breaking news here. The Crowborough Army Training Camp could hold male asylum seekers all the way until 2030.
Good.
After the Home Office claimed it would only be for 12 months. Not much ambition involved in that, is there, in terms of solving the migrant crisis?
Absolutely, and the way that the Labour government gaslit the public when the migrants were first moved in there, saying, you know, you guys are absolutely being mad. Crowborough is a quiet, leafy town in East Sussex. These people, you can see, have been pushed to their absolute limit. They're not the types that you usually see protesting about this sort of thing. But that town has been absolutely desecrated.
You're ruining the country. Get Keir Starmer out. Look, England flags. You're useless. Labour parties are useless.
I love our country. And one of the things about our country is good manners. Not very British.
What Labour advisor thought she wasn't going to be heckled at a petrol station in Leeds? Do these politicians actually ever get out and understand what it's like for real working class people? I thought it was British to exercise a right to free speech. That's what Keith Stalin told Trump. That's what White Van Man was exercising yesterday to Richard III. Oh yes, I remember. We're not really allowed our right to free speech in case we criticise the government.
You can't blame people so many decades away from you for the chaos that has been caused by Labour.
This is cheap politics, isn't it, Syrian?
Well, it's stupid politics. I mean, who raised national insurance on part-time workers? Labour. Who's been the stupid people that have wandered down the road and increased taxes on businesses and on individuals? Labour.
A lot of people get very frustrated, especially when the government says, oh, free school meals, you know, for every kid, not just the kids who really need them, free bus passes, free this, free that. None of it's free. It's subsidised and paid for by the taxpayer. And we're in this constant situation where the government's answer to everything is tax us a bit more, take more of our money, and then give some more of it away generously. It's our sodding money they're giving away.
Yeah, exactly. And it's either someone else's money today, another taxpayer, or even worse, it's the money from our future selves. And we keep making this mistake.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk Breakfast. Yeah, good morning. Ian Collins in for Jezza for this week. It's been a fun week so far. It's hump day. Still warm out there. Cooled down a tad for today, but yeah, you're going to still slap up with the old sun cream. And just when you thought it was safe to get back into the news, he's back. Tony Blair invoking his regular once-a-month intervention into matters that have absolutely nothing to do with him. Although this time, it's an attack on Keir Starmer, so maybe no bad thing. The former Prime Minister says the UK lacks a convincing plan for a long-term future. Is he right on that? Meanwhile, the party that say they do have a long-term plan is Reform UK, but all is not tickety-boo over there in their camp either, as a public row has kicked debates off after Robert Jenrick appeared to announce an immigration policy that isn't, well, official policy. Zia Youssef, who is the official spokesman on the issue, says Mr Jenrick was wrong and his comments were not reform policy. What does that mean? It feeds in, by the way, to the dire immigration figures we've seen from yesterday. They came out yesterday, but 1,000 migrants crossed the Channel over the bank holiday weekend. The sun was shining, the sea was very calm. What better way to check into the Four Seasons for free board and lodgings for life? And there is a wider issue with a by-election looming, bookmakers changing their odds on how things might pan out, the ongoing battle between Restore, Reform, even Advance thrown in there as well. Is it inevitable that all of these parties will be forced at some stage to merge in order to gain true success for the right? Would you support that? If you're a Restore supporter, what do you say to Rupert Lowe shaking hands and making up with Nigel Farage, and vice versa? Do Reform need Restore? And where do you stand on Advance, Ben Habib's party, or is it a think tank or a pressure group? They're not standing in the up-and-coming by-election. Your thoughts on that? And would you even throw the Conservatives in for good measure, just to make it one even bigger right-wing party? 0344 499 1000. Bit of breaking news, by the way, and it's not good news for energy users. That's all of us. A 13% rise in the energy price cap from July. Just been announced by Ofgem. A 13% rise in the energy price cap. That doesn't mean every bill will go up by 13%, but that is the, if I've got this right, the wiggle room that suppliers will have to work with. David says, morning Ian, Reform Restore conundrum. Reform's brand was originally based on authenticity. However, that crown continues to slip with Farage's U-turns and claims to instigate a rape gang inquiry and recruiting Tory rejects, plus a curious no-strings £5 million gift. Restore has simply filled the void created by those decisions. Rupert Lowe is certainly authentic and does what he says. You only have to view his financial scrutiny of the civil service during his committee encounters. It's what conservatism used to be. He has been more than a little effect, as David points out, on those committees when you are forced to look at government spending and how it works. And Rupert Lowe has been brilliant. I mean, it's all there to see. It doesn't naturally, it's not going to get it's not going to be the headline on the news at 10. But he's certainly doing a job in that department. And of course, he is still a sitting MP, albeit independent, after the fallout with Reform. So he's Restore MP, of course. So there it is. That's the state of play. But if they all came together, including the Tories, would that satisfy everybody? You can only see sort of a huge potential fallout on the way there as well. Let's get a word from David Wooding, Sun columnist, political journalist of many years, of course. How you doing, Dave?
Good morning, Ian.
Morning. Good to see you. Well, there's a lot to talk about here, and there's not really a month goes past, David, is there, when Tony Blair doesn't sort of put his own head above the parapet and dips his toe into current affairs. And here he is again saying that Labour have essentially lost their direction, and it's a warning essentially that the party is drifting too far left and they lack a convincing long-term plan. Do people within the Labour Party, I mean, it's good for us to talk about Tony Blair, very successful Prime Minister, all went a bit wrong over Iraq, of course, but prior to that, I mean, this guy was seismic in terms of changing the party and some would say changing the direction of the country. Do people on the left in the Labour Party still listen to him?
I think not. I think people on the left have lost their love for Tony Blair. They were desperate to win power at the time, and he was the man who delivered it. I mean, 3 general elections in a row. It's never been done by a Labour leader before. Of course, they're in power now, so they're probably thinking, well, keep your nose out. But nevertheless, for Keir Starmer himself and others, they will say, well, this is a few home truths being delivered to the Labour Party, saying that they're in the Premier League of Britain's in the Premier League of Nations now, and if we carry on as the government is, they'll be relegated. And he really does let rip. He says that the Labour Party has an infinite capacity for self-delusion, and that if they retreat to the comfort zone of the left, then they're going to go nowhere. He's really had a pop at Keir Starmer too, saying that he's got no coherent plan, and he's leaving ministers to totter in the breeze. I mean, this is quite hard-hitting stuff. And he also makes a point which you and I have discussed in the past, which is, what is this leadership election all about if they don't have a plan either?
Yeah.
I mean, what does Andy Burnham, for instance, say he's going to do about migration, about getting growth into the economy, about all the other problems that we have in this country? Because he's not talking about them at all.
Indeed.
He's just talking about change.
And there is a real danger. Do you remember? And we all fell for this, despite, you know, between us, many years of experience of covering this kind of stuff. And if you look at the collective of the Westminster lobby and all the various political journalists and commentators, when Starmer came in, we kind of thought, didn't we, that there was a secret plan, that it was going to be a bit Blair and Brown-like, and Starmer was going to come in and there would be this huge set of announcements. Remember when, you know, the Bank of England was given autonomy on about day 3 of the 1997 Labour victory. All sorts of initiatives were announced, and you could see this happening in real time. It was being streamed across the news daily, these big changes in the way the government ran, the way it did business, different policies on all manner of issues. And there was a sense that this is, Keir Starmer, he's had 5 years to get this plan up and running. He's now got this big, chunky majority in. He's going to come and something similar is going to happen. And, of course, it didn't happen. Their plan was just not to be the Conservatives. I still find that extraordinary. There was no central philosophy. Their biggest announcement was they're going to take winter fuel payments away from old people. I mean, you couldn't make that up. And I wonder, we all remember that happening. If a new leader comes in, if a Burnham character comes in, are we going to have the same thing? People who think people who want to be the Prime Minister, but that's kind of where it starts and where it stops.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, Tony Blair, when he came in, he really did hit the ground running. I mean, some of the things that were introduced then, love him or loathe him, they changed Britain. For instance, you know, independence for the Bank of England. And then I remember the schools revolution. He appointed the first ever school standards minister to make sure that schools actually delivered. We had league tables brought in so the parents could judge how good the schools were. And you take that across everything. There was the welfare to work plan. There was loads of things going on. Every day there was an announcement, and you felt that the government was actually doing something.
Yeah.
As you say, we expect the same from Keir Starmer. And what happened? He ends up sacking his chief of staff, Sue Gray, because she hadn't drawn up the first 100 days plan. Well, I would have thought in opposition he had enough time to think about what he was going to do and have a coherent plan, but there isn't one.
Yeah,
it's just drift.
It does seem to be drift, and I sort of sense, I know Andy Burnham would argue he's fighting a local campaign at the moment. We know what the true story is behind that. What is Burnhamism? I have no idea. I mean, yeah, there'll be a few fluffy bits. I would expect a 50p tax rate almost immediately. That would be largely symbolic, because we know it doesn't in itself raise stacks of money. It will raise some. But have other negative effects elsewhere, of course. So there'd be things like that. But this seismic change, and I think that's what Blair is talking about, and I sense that it's not just a broadside to Keir Starmer, but also to Andy Burnham as well.
Yeah, it seems to be a vanity contest. It's all about personality, changing personality. And I think Tony Blair makes that clear in his piece, that just having a new personality there isn't going to change it unless you have a plan. And I really don't know what Andy Burnham's got up his sleeve, because he hasn't let us see it yet. But I do remember him as the Secretary of State for Health and for Culture, Media and Sport. And his own personal interests seem to have dominated what he did. I mean, as Education Secretary, we heard a lot about sport in schools. He's a very keen football fan. So sport in schools, swimming, and that was the same in health. Let's get kids running and jumping into swimming pools because it's good for your health. And then, you know, as culture secretary, he was very interested in pop music, another thing he loves. Didn't really know much about the arts. So
Indeed.
perhaps we'll get a lot of those sort of initiatives again. But this, again, is not going to improve growth. It's not going to stop the migrant boats coming across. It's not going to get these young people, 1 in 5 young people who are languishing on the dole because they can't work and they're doomed to a life on benefits.
Indeed. It's just suddenly occurred to me that West Ham fans will forever hate Andy Burnham.
Yes, of course. Well,
because if Everton had beaten Spurs, that would have been a whole different story.
Well, don't ask David Cameron because he's a West Ham fan, isn't he?
Or is he a Villa fan?
Yeah, well, he's had a mixed year this year because Villa won the UEFA Cup and West Ham got promoted.
Yeah, so he's
to ask him how
he's happy. Oh, I think it's claret and blue, my team. Yeah, that'll do. What about this row with Zia Youssef and Robert Jenrick? This is interesting because Jenrick was appearing on telly at the weekend and suggested that foreign nationals would not be... This is foreign nationals who are living in council accommodation would not exclusively face deportation if they lived in social housing. This has been contradicted by Zia Youssef, who is in fact the Home Affairs spokesman for reform. Said it's not reform. He says Robert Jenrick was wrong, and it's not reform policy. Now, that's a bit of a telling off. I mean, there's various ways you can say, oh, no, actually, I think what Robert meant was this, but he said this. It looks like a bit of a fallout at a fairly high level of reform. Is this significant, Dave?
Yeah, I think there's some kind of friction between these two guys. I've read precisely over a couple of times what these two people are saying on this, and there doesn't seem to be a disagreement, really. Robert Jenrick is saying it's not exclusively the case that if you are living in council accommodation and you're a foreign national, you will be deported. Then Zia Youssef clarifies it and says what the case is that if you're living in a council house on taxpayers' money, you will automatically be deported. Yeah. Well, that's probably what Robert Jenrick meant. You know, you won't be if you're living in a council house, you won't be deported unless you're living off the taxpayer, i.e. you're not earning a living. That's the way I read it. But what it shows is a deep rift between these two men. They had a lot of fallouts when Robert Jenrick was a Tory. In fact, I think Zia Youssef called him a clown or something like that.
Yeah.
And Robert Jenrick retorted on Twitter, as they always do, that is it any surprise everyone calls you Zia useless? So there has been a bit of a fallout in the past, and I suspect there's a bit of a clash of personalities going on there, and I'd love to know what's going on in the background.
And of course that policy becomes it's a bit clunky, isn't it? Firstly, I mean, saying you're going to deport someone is, as we know, is not the easiest thing in the world. Even if it's doable, it can take years. But secondly, who are they talking about here? What if you've got somebody who's Polish and has lived here for 30 years? They legitimately got themselves a place to live. They pay their rent, they pay their taxes, they stumble across a bit of hard times, they might have become disabled or whatever, ill health, might even be just retired, living on a pension. I mean, are they included in this?
Absolutely. I think they need a meeting with Tony Blair to try and straighten this one out.
I'd like to be a fly on the wall for that one. One of the big issues, of course, that will be decisive as we move towards another general election will be that of immigration. This is interesting, of course, because this was reform's big thing. Reform, some would say, was almost formed because of these kind of big stories. 1,000 men a week coming over on rubber boats across the this weekend just passed, nearly 1,000 migrants crossed. The seas were calm, the sun was shining, perfect weather to make that journey. Now, of course, you've got Restore Britain. They say, no, actually, only our policy is the real policy on immigration. Reforms is unworkable, and it's kind of nothing compared to what we would do. So it's going to become a big issue, and it's naturally thrown up the question, look, why don't you guys all get together? I know this is not an entirely new debate. Why don't Reform get together, Restore get together, throw in Ben Habib, throw in Kemi Badenoch's Conservatives? You'd have one huge party of the right to take on Labour and arguably could win a general election. But individually, and we're seeing this with Makerfield, they're likely to split the vote and cause nothing but more success for Labour.
Absolutely. Again, I think that's unlikely because there seems to be a big disagreement between the two of them. It's got really personal between Nigel Farage and Rupert Lowe. It's a bit like Zia Youssef and Robert Jenrick. If they can't keep peace within their own party, the chances of making peace with a rival party is very, very difficult. And as you rightly say, I think they were on about Reclaim Britain were on about 7% in the last poll, which means there's no chance of winning Makerfield. But what they will do is take a lot of votes away from Reform. So I think the people of Makerfield would have to decide whether they want Andy Burnham or they want the plumber.
In fact, you just said Reclaim then rather than Restore, but Reclaim are another party, aren't they?
I know, exactly.
I'd forgotten all about it. Is that the Lawrence Fox thing?
That's right, Reclaim and Restore, I mean, they all begin with the letter R as well.
They do, indeed.
No, if we seasoned political operators can make a slip like that, it just shows punters looking at a voting slip on the day could easily.
We had a Reform person on yesterday who actually called her party Restore. So I mean, everybody's at it. It seems.
Yeah,
it's an easy mistake to make.
I think we'll form a party called Retreat.
There you go. That's what we need.
We'll go back to the old days.
Just be us two in it, Dave.
Yeah.
But what fun we would have. Dave, great to see you. Thank you for coming on. Enjoy the day. David Wooding, Sun columnist and political journalist. Thank you to him. Let's get a word on that Reform Restore issue. Could they come together? Sam's in Wrexham. How you doing, Sam? Morning.
Morning. You all right?
Yeah, I'm good. What's happening?
Yeah. Well, listen, if these don't get their act together within this next week, they're just going to hand a victory to Andy Burnham, which we do not want in this country, which will give more power to the left completely. And
do you think, though, I mean, because when you put it like that, Sam, you know, people will go, yeah, that's absolutely true. Notionally, that is true. But you're talking about big figures here. Nigel Farage and Rupert Lowe are big figures. Rupert Lowe has, run a lot of businesses incredibly successfully. He doesn't take any kind of jip from anyone. Could he really get back into bed with Farage?
No, none of them. The four of them. There was an article there. It's Jeff Banks where he said he wanted the four of them, and that included Tommy Robinson, to get their heads together. We need these people. We need every one of them. Every one of them's got to contribute to the way the country is run. They've all got their own egos, as we've said. But we need people like that.
I don't have a problem with an ego. In fact, if a politician hasn't got one, then don't trust them, because you've got to have a bit of an ego. You've got to have self-belief. You've got to be able to stand there and tell the rest of the country that you know more than most because you have a plan, and you've got to have that confidence. I get all of that. I just wonder whether you could bring all those factions together, Sam, with any level of success without there being an almighty row.
They won't. What they're going to do is we're just going to end up with lefties yet again, because we've only got to get the Greens and the Labour in, and they'll wipe the floor with the rest.
Well, they could. I mean, seriously, yeah. If it was a hung parliament, we saw it in 2010, didn't we? And how long it took for them to work out the Lib Dems and the Tories and this unlikely coalition, which sort of pootled along at a snail's pace for 5 years. It would be extraordinary, because you would have Labour, you would have the SNP, you'd have the Lib Dems, you'd have the Greens, all forming part of this sort of rainbow alliance of left-wing doom.
Exactly. And the problem is that I've been in business for myself. I employ 10 people. I've been doing this will be my 38th year now.
Yep.
And it is hard work now, literally, with everything what goes on. It is absolutely diabolical what constraints.
Shouldn't have got harder, should it? It should have got, over the years, these things refine and should become easier.
Harder to work than sit on your backside at home.
Absolutely right. Sam, great call. Thank you very much for that. 0344 499 1000. You want to leave a voice note on Uniting the Right, a voice note on, oh, by the way, how to keep your pets cool. We're going to throw you as a public service thing, you know. I mean, we're not watchdog, but I'm telling you, we're on it with this kind of stuff. Thoughts on Tony Blair's intervention? Have the SNP still got questions to answer over Nicola Sturgeon? I haven't visited that one yet, but I tell you what, Scottish independence is back on the agenda now that they're up and running. And if there was a coalition of the left, I tell you what, that's going to be the red line for the SNP if they come back in. We want another one. What, another one? Yeah, another one. 0344 499 1000. Let's get a voice note on Uniting the Right. Morning, Adrian.
People, political parties, leaders with great egos, I think that is the problem. We've got 3 centre-right parties, Restore, Advance and, of course, Reform. And I should declare an interest. I'm a Reform member, have been from the beginning. And we really do need these 3 leaders to get together. And I really think Restore are going to run the risk of being so extreme or seen as extreme. So I think, what's that old expression in Russian? Revenge is a dish best served cold. Well, I think Rupert's going to get his dish served, but I think the rest of the country is going to probably pay the price, and it will be a very heavy one. I hope he enjoys it. Good luck all.
Mr. Speaker, I know many members across the House will find these facts to be incredible. To that, I can only say they are right. It beggars belief that throughout the whole timeline of events, officials in the Foreign Office saw fit to withhold this information from the most senior ministers in our system in government.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Morning, welcome back. 27 minutes after 7 o'clock, Ian Collins in for Jeremy Kyle. Comments coming through from you. Peter says 13% rise in our energy bills. So much for Labour and its lies about paying less for energy. I don't know how they're going to square that. They'll say, well, it's nothing to do with this, was Ofgem. No, you are the government. And Keir, you are the Prime Minister. Do you remember, it was even worse than just say cheaper energy. There was it a £600 pledge or something? £600 better off, which they suddenly and quietly dropped just about 4 weeks before the last election. One in from Mick, who says, Jenrick is not a team player. He caused division in the Tory party. He'll do exactly the same with Reform. Dave in Bristol, Blair is the architect of the left influence that has infiltrated all of our institutions and major organisations. Uncontrolled immigration, EU domination and the chaos we now have is his legacy. Now he's attacking the left, he says. 0344 499 1000. Drop us a voice note on that number. You can call as well, same number, or message 87222. Let's go back then to all matters SNP related. A witness has cast doubt on Nicola Sturgeon's claims that she knew nothing about the motorhome her estranged husband had bought using embezzled SNP funds. But the motorhome is understood to have been parked at her mother-in-law's house in Dunfermline, Fife, for 2 years before it was seized by police, which was last April. Now, Ryan Thomas Quinn has told The Telegraph in an interview that he saw the former First Minister on a shopping trip to Asda, which is 6 minutes by car to her mother-in-law's house, Margaret Murrell's home, which is where the motorhome that she knew nothing about was. Mr. Quinn said she was standing near the tills with a frozen pizza, garlic bread, and told another shopper that she had family living in Dunfermline, which would suggest, if she was in that area buying a pizza and garlic bread, that she would have seen the motorhome. Also, MSPs are back at Holyrood to be given power to hold independence referendum is another headline we're reading today too. Let's talk about all of this. John Boothman is political correspondent at the Sunday Times Scotland. Morning to you, John.
How you doing, Ian?
I'm good, thank you. I mean, it's always seemed... I mean, this Murrell and Sturgeon story, I mean, it is satire. It's the thick of it. It's all of those things. It's got everything going on in it. When we read out the list yesterday, which I don't think any journalist has got fed up with reading that list because it's just beautiful. The material is endless. And it's not just the salt and pepper shakers and the Jaguar. It's the PlayStation and the Grand Theft Auto games, the pogo stick or swing ball, was it? Goodness knows what. Everything was there. And the onesie. He liked a onesie, apparently. So he was buying stuff left, right and centre. Because the central point was she knew nothing about this. And many people are struggling with that assertion.
Sorry, my TV analogy yesterday was the generation game for people who remember that. I had
cuddly
this
toy
thing of, you know, a big conveyor belt for upmarket goods going past my eyes. Look, yeah, Nicola Sturgeon has consistently and repeatedly and still says she knew nothing about this. It was going on for 10 years, more than 10 years. She said also that she didn't even have a suspicion of it. Yeah. Now, that's become very, very difficult for not just, you know, the public to comprehend, but certainly in the bubble of politics where everybody's asking questions. All of the papers this morning are covering stories about calls for some kind of independent inquiry into this. The motorhome thing is just such an amazing story. That's become, in reality, the symbol of this story. You know, the same day in April 2021, when that big blue tent that we all remember went up in the front garden of Nicola Sturgeon's house in Glasgow, there was a raid in the SNP HQ in Edinburgh, and this camper van, which had been, you know, it's now sitting in a police compound. It's been there for 3 years, but the camper van sat outside Peter Murrell's mother's house in Dunfermline, as you said, for, well, we think 2 years before that. Yeah. Hence this witness coming forward to the Telegraph newspaper this morning and saying, you know, she was seen in the vicinity. You know, we are now to believe that whether she was in the vicinity or not, that for 2 years Nicola Sturgeon didn't visit her mother-in-law in Dunfermline. Now, that may or may not be the case. But as I say, Nicola Sturgeon has consistently denied it, and that's the thing I think that people do find very, very difficult.
Indeed. Did nobody use this camper van, by the way? Have we got any intel on whether it actually left the mother-in-law's drive? Because, I mean, it seems a fairly ostentatious purchase, 125,000 quid, for something you don't use.
Well, it's a big camper van. What we do know is that it was purchased. It was purchased from a company in Staffordshire. It was driven to an industrial estate in a place called Halbeath, which I know very well. It's not very, very far from Nicola Sturgeon's then mother-in-law's house. That's where Peter Murrell took possession of it in January 2021. And as I say, we understand it sat there for 2 years. As I say, was towed away by the police and is now in their custody. I mean, what happens next with the camper van? It'll be interesting to see when all of this is over.
Well, it'd be interesting what the mileage looks like from when it was first purchased to now, even allowing for the, the trip from the mother-in-law's home to the police station and the pound, and the trip from purchasing it to where it then went next. If it's got another 3,000 miles on it, then Murrell's been out on manoeuvres, hasn't he? Or somebody has, and whether Nicola was in the back, we've yet to establish.
Well, look, I don't know that we'll ever find anything else about that. But look, that's the big, tip of the iceberg in this story. We're also talking about, remember, a Jaguar I-Pace car. It was £90,000. The part payment in 2019 of £17,000 for a Volkswagen Golf. And as you say, that long list of stuff, right, which was just utterly unbelievable. 125 pages of stuff. Basically in the indictment that Peter Murrell confessed to in the end in court on Monday.
It's going to be interesting where this one goes. I mean, it may just kind of die off. Who knows? However, what we do know is the SNP themselves are obviously distancing themselves from this detail. They will talk about this being a previous administration, nothing to do with us. We've drawn a line under that. The new kids are in town now. We've had some electoral success. We're running the place. We've got a lot to get on with. And, of course, central to that will always be, because it's the SNP, John, independence for Scotland. That one's back at the top of the list.
I think it's worth saying two things, Ian. The first thing is that, certainly the media in Scotland will not let this story go. This story is going to continue for a long time. Peter Murrell's back in court next week for a narrative of what happened. He's on remand in jail until the 23rd of June. Then he'll probably face a hefty prison sentence. So in the immediate term, it's not going away. John Swinney has difficulties with this issue as well, simply because he's known Peter Murrell for a long time. He appointed Peter Murrell as chief executive of the SNP back in at the turn of the century when he was the leader of the SNP for the first time. So there's still questions being asked around about that. But yes, independence. I mean, unfortunately for the SNP, their first action in the Scottish Parliament, the new Scottish Parliament elected earlier on in the month, was to have a debate on independence, which basically they had yesterday, which was all terribly amusing for some, on the basis that it came after the day that Peter Murrell had made his great admissions in court. Does it go away? No, it's not going away. But look, the objective circumstances of this, there is nobody at Westminster going to agree to give the powers of to conduct a referendum to the Scottish Parliament. It's not the same as what happened back in 2011 and 2012 with David Cameron. The situation is very, very different now. It's the last thing that Keir Starmer or any future Labour leader in the coming couple of years is going to agree to.
Unless, of course, John, final point, that you were in a coalition talk about the next government and you were trying to gather together and cobble some parties into power, whether that's the Greens, the Lib Dems and the SNP. All of those parties would have their pet projects and their red lines, and one would have to reasonably assume that would be on the SNP's list.
Oh, look, it's always been top of the SNP's agenda at the end of the day. And we're saying also, it's also at the top of the Greens' agenda. And they've become, pretty successful in recent times in Scotland. So, look, any of these things are a possibility, but I think they're a long way off. And as I say, given the state of the Labour government at the moment, it's the last thing they want. But there will be pressure for it, not just in Scotland, but in Northern Ireland, where you have
Sure.
a Sinn Féin First Minister, and in Wales, where
Indeed.
for the first time you've got a Plaid Cymru First Minister.
Spot on. John, great to see you again. Thank you for coming on. John Boothman, political correspondent over there at the Sunday Times in Scotland. Thank you to him. Over to you. 0344 499 1000. Amanda says, I'm absolutely furious with Rupert Lowe and others that are putting their selfish vendettas before the good of the country. I'm sure that anger is growing in the UK. Yeah, I think you're right, Amanda. What do you make of it? Unite in the right. Is that the only way for there to be real success against Labour? Thoughts on that? Here's a voice note. Morning, Kelly.
Good morning, Ian. It's Kelly from Essex. I'm just thinking about all of the right uniting, and at this stage, I think as a majority in the country, we know that if they don't unite, it makes us question exactly what their motives are. Now, they're telling us it's for everything that they're doing is for the benefit of the country, but we're in a state where they need to do whatever that takes to make things right in this country. And in this case, that may well be uniting. They need to do that for us. We've had enough. Must go. Husband's just pulled up in a new motorhome. Don't know where he's got it. Don't know where he got the money, but hey-ho, I'm going to enjoy it anyway. Have a great day.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
And good morning, welcome back. Home of Common Sense, Ian Collins in for Jezza for this week. So much great stuff coming in from you. Loads of calls, loads of comments. Margaret says Nigel has his hands full at the moment. Zia and Robert sort of falling out. Don't forget, Zia walked away last year for a week. He did, of course. And the tweets from the plumber. What are the tweets from the plumber? Have I missed it? Oh, the Makerfield. Sorry, I hear what you're saying. Apologise. Yes, Margaret, you're right. So there's all of those little factors. Although I didn't think that the Reform candidates, you know, when it comes to looking into people's social media history, I'm not going to defend anyone, whether it's this guy or anyone else who said some stuff that is undesirable. But it didn't jump out at me as being, you know, there was a lot of like, well, you could interpret it that way or that way, bit of sarcasm, bit of goading, etc. It didn't seem to be a litany of horror, which we have seen some people throw out on social media and survive the fight as well. 0344 499 1000. So Britain's top 4 energy quangos have seen costs balloon and staff numbers surge by up to 380% after Ed Miliband's net zero push, according to new figures. The fuel duty cut is a con. There's one headline. Rachel Reeves plans quicker and steeper stealth raids on drivers in the new year, according to figures. So there's a lot in there when it comes to the cost of living, whether it's about our energy prices, whether it's about driving our car. My goodness, it ain't cheap to live in this country. Let's speak to James Woodhusen, who is, of course, journalist and broadcaster. Nice to have you on with us again, James. I mean, it just seems that each day, you know, we're all sort of waiting, like we're a kind of an orphanage awaiting adoption of decency and a new way and a new life and a new beginning. We just give us something, give us hope. And every day the headlines keep on coming and they're not good.
Well, it's important to keep our nerve, Ian. The prospect, I think, before us is an alliance between not just Labour and Ed Miliband and Rachel Reeves on the Labour Party front, but between them, the Lib Dems, the Greens, Uncle Tom Cobley, the SNP after Uncle Tom Cobley, all against, united against Farage. And that means that I think if they're successful, no matter the fate of the Labour Party in that, the overall ensemble does not give us a lot of hope for quite a bit of time. The other thing is that a lot of our analysts have said of energy that we're in for high prices for the next 5, 10, 15 years.
Yeah.
Even Emma Pinchbeck, the head of the Climate Change Commission, whose membership we all know backwards, she has said that we'll have to wait to the 30s before we get cheaper energy bills.
Wow.
So it's very worrying. You're right about that.
I mean, we are talking about people's energy bills that are slowly resembling a monthly mortgage payment.
Well, that's a very good point. Of course, there are other revelations just right now. You may have seen that even the official sources from the government agree that 30% of all the heat pumps installed would have been installed without a subsidy, and therefore we've wasted £800 million, getting on for £1 billion, just financing rich people who have their own homes, don't live in a tower block or anything like that, with these heat pump machines that don't really work at all well in Britain.
Well,
they
indeed.
work a bit in Scandinavia, but not here.
And it's interesting, even people like Dale Vince, the entrepreneur, the green environmentalist, who's absolutely, you know, his whole thing is protecting the planet, the environment. Even he is pathologically against heat pumps. Now, he has his own reasons for that, but my point, James, is that this divides the room even for those who are supporters of Labour.
Yes, that's right. I think what we've got to realise, if I may, Ian, is that there's a sort of three-pronged offensive from Labour. The first is, as you hinted, that they want to expand their supporters in the NGO sphere very much. They want to create or bolster a new ruling class like Ofgem, which has expanded from about 400 people to more than 2,000. 2,000 regulators for a little old country like Britain. And it's the same. There are also other regulatory bodies, some of whom I hadn't heard of. Like
2,000 regulators?
Yeah, well, 2,000 people in Ofgem, you know.
That's extraordinary.
Well, it is. I mean, I don't know what they're doing all day. And I'm not sure
these aren't the energy... This is just the people that are meant to keep their eye on the energy companies.
Yeah, I mean, you know, the green complaint is the big 6 energy companies. Does it take 2,000 people to regulate 6 companies? I mean, yes, they're large, you know, E.ON and all of these people, British Gas. But nevertheless, when you look at that, they're trying to ensconce a whole layer of civil servant reporters, civil servants, regulators, journalist reporters, anybody they can gather around them in the state apparatus to enforce their rule. The second thing that they're doing, the kind of converse of that, is to reduce real wages in the working class. Because if energy bills are going to go up £200 next month, as some people have speculated, if they're not going to go down for 5 or 10 years, then the pay in your pocket, Ian, is going to stretch much less. As you say, they're beginning to amount to a mortgage cost.
Yeah.
The final thing to say is they're not only feathering their nest and attacking the man in the street, but they're also attacking science, because the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change has just this week repudiated the scenarios, RCP 8.5, I think they're called, which have governed climate alarmism for the past 15 years. Now, the IPC has some critics, I'm one of them, but it's generally regarded as
It's the Bible, right?
Yeah,
as far as Ed Miliband is concerned, he cites it and quotes it all the time.
Well, they're repudiating what they used to say. Have we heard anything from Ed about this?
Yeah.
No. So that, you know, it's really an attack on normal people and on our understanding, Ed's misunderstanding of technology and science.
Absolutely right. And just a final point, James, filling up the car. I mean, we've got this freeze on, you know, the rise in fuel duty, whatever it is. I mean, it doesn't really touch the sides, does it? I mean, there's much more wiggle room. The government take over half in taxation of a litre of petrol. On top of that, they also tax the people that sell the petrol. So they're having it off royally in the government. It's becoming more and more expensive. And you just know that come the next budget, whether it's road tax, whether it's some additional tax on insurance or something, the driver will pay again.
Well, that's right. I mean, Rachel Reeves has one trick in her locker, and that's increased taxes. You know, she's not the brightest tool in the toolbox, and we have to understand it goes much further than just sort of rather boring tax measures, although they're very important if you're a motorist. And that is that they are enormously hostile to travel of any sort, right? They'll whack it on the air flights. They are collapsing the railway system with the nationalisation that's just happened, where trains are not happening. And they're really hostile to people getting in their cars. I might add to lorries getting in there and to vans who are also hit by fuel duty. So, you know, why are they hostile to travel? Because they are against the right of assembly. That's one of the reasons. They don't want us getting together.
It's worth a reminder, James, of what happens when Rachel Reeves herself turns up at a petrol station. Let's have another listen.
Kids down there, we're going to get arrested. We've got English flags on here, Rachel. We're going to get arrested. You're ruining the country. Get Keir Starmer out. Look, England flags. You're useless. Labour parties are useless.
I love our country. And one of the things about our country is good manners. Not very British.
Yeah, I mean, it's an awful cringe moment, isn't it, James, from Rachel Reeves? She didn't know how to deal with that. What was interesting is how she was determined not to even look at the van to start with. I know it's an old clip, we've all seen it many times now, but she just refused to move her head in the direction of the bloke shouting until he drove sort of round a bit. It's not good manners to be heckled. This is a woman that sits in Prime Minister's Question Time. Heckling is in her blood, for goodness sake. How dare she?
Well, they live in a cotton wool world, Ian. You know, there's one rule for them and another rule for everybody else. And it's been very apparent. We just have to laugh at them and ridicule them and muster our arguments better.
Indeed. James, we hit the clock, but great to see you. Thanks for coming on. James Woodhusen, he's a journalist and broadcaster. Some common sense points from him. Over to you, 0344 499 1000. We're doing a break here, Christian. We'll do a quick break. We're going to talk to George shortly as well. Loads more comments coming in. Lines are open, 10 to 8. This is Talk.
Some breaking news this morning revealed that under the Terrorist Act, 242 people were arrested in the year to June of this year.
That's something you can indulge in as to all the people who aren't going to prison because, well, there's no prison spaces.
This is a Talk exclusive we've been looking at.
I said, you take these cuffs off me and speak to me like a human being rather than a common criminal.
You're just left wondering, do these people who lead us actually hate Britain? Yeah. Do they not love our country and everything that we've stood for?
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk. Welcome back. Home of Common Sense, 0344 499 1000. Now, the story of the 3 teenage travellers' sentences for rape of 2 schoolgirls has been referred to the Court of Appeal after a decision to spare them jail sparked outrage. The 2 girls, aged 14 and 15 at the time, were raped by 2 14-year-old boys weeks apart in Hampshire, with a then 13-year-old also convicted over his role in the second incident. All 3 were handed youth rehabilitation orders and walked free from court. And what some people found upsetting were also the judge's comments on this. Let's get a word from Chris Daw, KC, barrister, writer and broadcaster, good friend of the show. Morning to you, Chris. Not unusual we see people fall out with the decision of a judge. You know, I get that. It's a democracy. This one has caught the eye of the Prime Minister, however, seems to have gone right to the top. How do you see this particular case as distinct from others of a similar nature?
Well, I see it in the same ways that I see any case that I haven't read the files for and haven't seen the evidence for and have only read a few hundred words of headlines and reports in newspapers and online. And I suspect that's all the Prime Minister had seen when he decided to wade into it, because let's be honest, he waded into it even though it was nothing to do with him. The decision whether to refer a case like this to a Court of Appeal is for the Attorney General, and the Attorney General has to do it on very strict legal grounds, although how that was done in a few days is to imagine.
I mean, there's no doubt that Starmer did jump on, and some would say maybe it's his job as a Prime Minister to reflect what appears to be some growing anger at what is, by any stretch of the imagination, let's be polite, a curious sentence for the crime of rape. I did see that this particular, and you're right, the details of the judge's words, which are public, but it's snail's pace stuff, as you know, in the legal world to find it. So it's not secret. It just hasn't, I think, been uploaded to the relevant websites yet. But I did hear, and I was reading that if this had been adults being tried for this case, with all of the details considered, then the defendants would have been looking at between 12 and 19 years in jail, which takes it to the sort of higher end of this kind of sexual assault rape case.
Oh, absolutely. Of course, you're right. And that's the way that youth sentencing, or child sentencing, as I call it, works. Child sentencing is focused on the welfare of children. It's not focused on punishing and locking people up for as long as possible. And that's quite right. It's a very different position when you're dealing with, for example, a 40-year-old adult child sex offender who's been committing child sex offences for decades, who finds himself convicted of something like this. Of course, he's going to receive a very long sentence, if not a life sentence. But of course, we don't treat children the way we do adults, except, it seems, in the criminal justice system, because we certainly don't let them vote on the criminal law.
Well, we don't. But it does seem, Chris, and just looking at this, that to not get some kind of custodial sentence, and I think the quote that we have got from the judge is that you don't belong in prison, and I know you have your own criticisms about how we over-prison people in this country, but I mean, if you can't go to jail for an offence as brutal and horrific as this, then what can you go to prison for?
Well, you say you can't go to jail. What you're talking about is children can't go to jail, 13 and 14.
Well, it's not jail, is it? It will be a youth custody of some kind, but it's not prison. It's not Strangeways.
Where do you think they're going to go? Because what happens to teenagers is they go to something called a young offenders institution, and a young offenders institution is a prison. I've been to many of them. They're just prisons. They have bars. They have clanging gates and all the other stuff. Okay, as a society, we can say, yeah, we want to send children to prison. In fact, we used to hang children in the Victorian time. So why don't we go back to that?
Well, no one's saying hang anybody. I mean, that takes it to another level. But a custodial sentence for rape would seem to be a default position, right? I mean, it would be unlikely that any other consideration would take place. I mean, what could be the mitigating circumstances that would stop you being incarcerated for a crime of this magnitude?
Well, the judge, I think, explained that. Even the public reports about that made clear that these children who committed these crimes were, in many cases, intellectually operating at well below their own level and emotionally operating at below their chronological age, which, of course, is often the case for 13 and 14-year-old boys that have mental and emotional kind of retardation, if that's the right word, probably not anymore, but not the usual process of growth and maturation which you see in most young people. And these young people, as a result, are not not considered by the judge and by the law to be as culpable as an adult making the decision to commit those crimes in the way that I described earlier, as a sort of sophisticated...
But Chris, some would say, well, that makes them perhaps more dangerous. I mean, based on the fact that the judge is almost saying, well, you know, you didn't know what you were doing, your mental capacity is zero, and, you know, you weren't in control of anything, you didn't understand that it was... I mean, that's a dangerous kid out there. And, you know, custodial... I'm not suggesting you bury somebody in a ground in Wormwood Scrubs, but to be removed from the public for safety reasons would sound reasonable.
But what you've just said about the situation is not what the judge said. The judge didn't say any of those things. What the judge was doing, and I think people need to understand this, there's a choice to be made. And the law says that when you sentence a child, you must consider their welfare, education and rehabilitation as the primary considerations. That's what the law, the statutory law says. Now, all the judge has done is apply the law. Now, people don't like the law and they think, oh, actually, 13-year-olds should be treated exactly the same as 40-year-olds when they commit sex offences. Then fine, give them 20 years and they can go to prison for 20 years. But the problem with that, Ian, is A, there is an illusion that these things are a deterrent. So, for example, I was doing an interview about this yesterday, and someone said, well, how will these 13-year-olds know what to do and right from wrong if the judge says it's all okay? Well, that presumes that these 13, 14-year-olds, like any potential criminal, are sitting around waiting for judges to pass sentence, read about them on the news, and then decide whether to go and do a crime or not. I mean, that's just not how crime works. It's certainly not how 13-year-olds think. And so the reality is we have to ask ourselves a question, and here's the bigger question, Ian. There are, on the latest figures, 800,000 people who were the victim of some form of sexual assault in 1 year. Only a few hundred people a year ever go to prison for rape or serious sexual assaults, a low number of thousands. So, in other words, 0.something% of all the examples of sexual assault result in someone going to prison. Now, of course, you can pick one headline case of 13 and 14-year-olds, which is at the serious end of the spectrum, and start to ask questions about it. But the real question is, what are we doing about the 800,000 victims who are getting no justice?
Well, I think on that point, we would also agree with that. Listen, this one will go on and we'll wait and see what happens at the Court of Appeal. Chris, thank you. Chris Dorr, KC, barrister, writer and broadcaster. The judge was just applying the law, says Chris. Your thoughts on that? 0344 499 1000. We ramp it up a gear in the next section, coming to you after the news at 8 o'clock here on Talk, which is next.
My fellow Americans, let me begin by congratulating the team at NASA and our brave astronauts on the successful launch of Artemis 2. It was quite something. It will be traveling further than any manned rocket has ever flown and will very substantially pass the moon, go around it, and come back home from a distance that has never been done before. It's amazing.
Roger, roll pitch. Integrity, AMT high.
Due to that suit being pressurized and expanded, as well as the umbilicals being connected.
We are now falling to the moon rather than rising away from Earth. It is an amazing milestone.
We are standing by for the Integrity crew aboard Orion to surpass the Apollo 13 record.
Integrity, we're now resuming operational audio contact.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, Ian Collins in for Jezza for the rest of this week. If you've been following us since 6 this morning, you will know diversity is our middle name, and not in that respect, in the sense of the plethora of talking points, debate, comments from you. Absolutely rammed to the gills at this end. So much stuff. We'll get through as much as we can. 0344 499 1000. Just when you thought it was safe to go back into the news, he's back. Tony Blair invoking his regular once-a-month intervention into matters that have absolutely nothing to do with him. This time, it's an attack on Keir Starmer, so maybe not a bad thing after all. The former PM says the UK lacks a convincing plan for the long-term future. Your thoughts on that? Meanwhile, the party that says they do have a long-term plan is Reform UK, but all is not tickety-boo in their camp either. A bit of a public row has kicked off between Robert Jenrick and Zia Youssef, who's the official spokesman on issues around immigration. This is after Mr Jenrick appeared to announce a policy that wasn't, well, reform policy. They've fallen out again, it seems. And it does feed into that news at the weekend. 1,000 people came across the channel over the bank holiday. The sun was shining, the sea was calm. What better way to check into the UK on a nice sunny day? And there is a wider issue as well, and I will forever be fascinated with this. For those who are Restore voters or Reform voters, even Ben Habib and Advance, and there's either that other one called Reclaim. Is that still hanging around? And you could throw the Tories in there as well. Is it inevitable all of these parties will be forced to merge into one unit in order to gain some kind of true success? There are many people in all of those different groups, different political parties, that are screaming out for that. However, I really sense that there's even more who can't think of anything worse. The thought for some people that Nigel Farage would get into bed with Rupert Lowe is unthinkable, and vice versa. The idea that Kemi Badenoch, His Majesty's official leader of the opposition, would even sit and break bread with these people, unthinkable. Or is it? Because these things are often unthinkable until they are thinkable. 0344 499 1000. We'll chat to Dan Hodges in just a second. Some breaking news, some astonishing footage that we've had sent to us here at Talk Towers of a fire in Golders Green that is happening now. If you're watching us on the YouTube feed, you'll be able to see that for yourself. According to reports, it is the site of Kosher Kingdom, which is the biggest kosher supermarket in Golders Green. You can see from those images, certainly the smoke coming from it looks to be pretty significant. One would assume that there's a pretty serious fire behind that. It's on the main road. It's exactly the same spot that the King visited just 2 weeks ago, and literally around the corner from the ambulance arson attack. Now, we don't have any confirmation or anything to tell us that this is connected as some kind of attack. The anti-Semitism attacks that we've seen way too often, no evidence at the moment to suggest it's anything to do with that. There could be other far simpler reasons as to what has happened, but certainly that looks like a fire that, whilst they are on the case now, is certainly of a serious magnitude. This is Kosher Kingdom, big kosher supermarket, the biggest kosher supermarket in Golders Green, and a significant fire that has broken out. Emergency services are in attendance. Now, let's speak with Dan Hodges, commentator at the Mail on Sunday, a regular with us here on Talk. Morning to you, Dan.
Good morning.
I know you're writing a lot about Makerfield at the moment. You're writing a lot about reform. You've got your eye on all sorts of balls that are being thrown into the air right now. We live in a, in a place that, you or I 5 years ago couldn't have imagined that the political terrain would look like it does. More parties that are out there, not just smaller parties, but parties that were small and got very big very quickly. I'd include the Greens in that one as well. It's a very mixed bag at the moment. Nothing we've ever seen before.
Yeah, I mean, and as you say, it's all being, in a sense, is being symbolised by this increasingly fascinating and surreal contest that's taking place in Makerfield, where, when the contest started, I think we all thought, I certainly thought it was going to be a straight up fight between Labour and Reform. But now, as you were saying in your introduction, we've suddenly got Restore, who have emerged as a big force within this by-election. Whether that is something that's happened organically, I mean, my own feeling is a big part of it is the quite incredible and hysterical reaction, some might say overreaction, from Reform to a poll that came out on Sunday showing Restore polling at 7%. I mean, you were saying, just in your introduction, is there any prospect of Nigel Farage getting into bed with Rupert Lowe as a result of all this? I mean, from what I'm looking at the moment, the only instance in which Nigel Farage would get into bed with Rupert Lowe is to put a horse's head in his bed. I mean, these people are absolutely tearing at each other, have a hatred for each other that goes beyond broader politics.
Correct.
And it's, as I said, but it is playing through in a way that I think is going to have real significance in terms of what happens in Makerfield. And as we know, Makerfield is going to have such massive significance for the face of British politics moving forward.
Indeed. And of course it is, just to reiterate for those at the back, that 7% that you referred to, if that were to be real at the election, when the election comes on June the 18th, it would or could be decisive. It could be the difference between a Reform win and a Labour win, with Restore coming in and splitting the vote.
Absolutely. I mean, I've got to say, and every time I say this, I immediately get pounced on by various supporters of various parties for attempting to manipulate the result. But what I was hearing over the weekend, and certainly I was hearing yesterday, from various sources up in the constituency, based on what they're seeing on the ground in canvass returns, there is a feeling that Restore's vote is actually significantly higher than the 7% that was reported in that opinion poll. But it's so early in the contest. I mean, I'm going back to the constituency this week. I'll try and gauge myself just what Restore's level is there. But as I said, it's very, very difficult at the moment to disentangle what is organic support for Restore and what is simply, the voters reacting to the spectacle of Nigel Farage, his lieutenants, the entire Reform sort of social media network, the entire Reform campaigning network running around screaming, Restore are coming, Restore are coming, Restore are coming. It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy in that sense.
Indeed. There is, of course, I suppose, some consolation for Reform, and that is that nationally they are still leading the polls, and if there were an election tomorrow, they're likely to be the largest party, so they can still rest on that. But of course they have their own problems, it seems, and I know it's a very easy sort of route one journalistic route, Dan, to just pick up on a bit of a row between a couple of their players, but there are fewer of them, in terms of high profile. Zia Youssef and Robert Jenrick are two of them. One said one thing on the telly on Sunday, and the other has very publicly contradicted him in a way that does sound slightly more than a clarification. It goes a little deeper than that, it seems.
Absolutely, and I think what was fascinating about the latest sort of spat between Jenrick and Zia Youssef yesterday was it wasn't on some sort of slightly obscure aspect of party policy where you think some sort of clarification would be required. It was on immigration, which is supposed to be reform's sort of bread and butter issue, the absolute, the policy that is at the very heart of reform's offer to the British people. And the fact that we're in the middle of, you know, what is everyone regards one of the most consequential by-elections since the war, and reform cannot get their ducks in a row on a policy of this magnitude, to the extent its senior sort of officials and officers and MPs are scrapping with each other over what the policy is, I think, indicative of something, because that's not the only problem we've seen. I mean, we've obviously got this ridiculous situation now. And again, I did say this in advance of the by-election. You know, we've had this situation where Reform have picked a candidate for an incredibly high-profile by-election. They haven't done the proper vetting on the guy. All these sort of dodgy social media posts are starting to emerge. As a result of that, they've had to bury the candidate and just keep him away from the press. We've, as I said, had this sort of completely hysterical reaction to the perceived Restore breakthrough. Nigel Farage, as far as anybody can see, has disappeared. It's completely vanished. Again, at such a crucial moment. We had the mystery of David Bull, the party chairman, who disappeared for a week and then finally popped up yesterday, issued some statement, but some people will point to the fact it didn't actually mention Nigel Farage in his statement. Something is not right inside Reform. Something is going on there. I don't know whether it's sort of the intrinsic issues relating to the various personalities. I don't know whether it's to do with broader debates about the political strategy. I do think part of it is Restore have got into their heads. You know, Restore really are freaking them out. But at the moment, every day we're seeing another self-inflicted blunder from Reform. You know, we should be beyond this now. You know, these aren't, you know, just the plucky underdogs who just came wandering in, you know, and, you know, upending the British political establishment. You know, they've been in the lead in the opinion polls now for well over a year. We just had the local election results in which they, you know, smashed everybody else off the park. You know, this is a party, if Reform are serious about being an alternative party of government, the next party government, they should be doing better than this. You know, they should be getting their act together much better than this.
Politics is, it's strange, isn't it? How something you can't imagine is going to happen could literally happen the next day. And we sort of live in that very fast evolving world. Kemi Badenoch's star, to coin that old cliche, seems to be rising. She's doing rather well at PMQs. They didn't do particularly well at the local elections, it has to be said. So the classic case of the leader more popular than party, perhaps. Do you think the Conservatives, Dan, through all of this fog of Rupert, Nigel, you know, even Ben Habib, I think that Lawrence Fox guy's got a party still knocking around as well. But with all of this mood music, the Robinson stuff, could Kemi come through the middle of all of that and say the adults are back?
Yeah, I think, you know, we've all been talking about, and I've been talking about, how Makerfield is an existential by-election for the Labour Party. And if the Labour Party were to lose it, it's basically game over for the Labour Party as we know it. But I am starting to think, primarily just looking at the reaction of people in Reform, that it's becoming a very, very important, if not vital, by-election for them. Because if we were to have a situation where Restore were to make a significant breakthrough in Makerfield, if they were to get anywhere near the sort of levels of support that I'm hearing some people are saying sort of the mid-teens. I even had 3 people yesterday independently told me, looking at the trends in the constituency at the moment, they genuinely think there is an outside chance that Restore could actually catch Reform.
Wow.
If these scenario, now that's, as I said, I was being briefed. I I'm slightly sceptical about that. But as I said, I'm going up there soon, so I'll be in a better position to say. But if we come out of this and Reform have lost another high-profile by-election, okay, there's the Burnham effect involved. But if they've lost in a way that has opened the door for Restore, and suddenly Restore are on the park, and they are getting relatively significant polling numbers, and they are getting the publicity that goes with that, and they are getting the national media attention that goes with that, then I think you're absolutely right. I think that the fragmentation, if you like, the split amongst the split of the split, I think at that point, Kemi Badenoch is in a position to say, look, the political landscape is changing. It's quite clear they're Labour's getting rid of Starmer, probably going to bring in Burnham. He at least temporarily is going to be a popular leader. There is now a prospect that Labour could actually, you can see a scenario now when Starmer goes where Labour could actually position themselves so that they are in a position to win a subsequent general election. Whether with a majority or not is debatable, but certainly in a position where they would remain in government. If you want to stop that, there's only really one game in town, and it's us. Look at what Reform are doing. Look at what Restore are doing. They're fighting like ferrets in a sack. Come, as you say, come back to the grown-ups. Now, whether that'll work is a different matter, but I can certainly see Kemi Badenoch starting to deploy that argument.
There is a bit of a conspiracy theory, you'd have probably seen it online, Dan, that Rupert Lowe and Restore are kind of almost a concocted entity to benefit the Conservatives, based on pretty much everything we were just saying. I mean...
Yeah, I keep saying, I keep seeing conspiracy theories that Rupert Lowe is a concocted entity of me.
Well, that's the one I believe.
So so I think we can take some of these with a pinch of salt. The point is, it wasn't Kemi Badenoch that brought Rupert Lowe into the political front line. It was Nigel Farage.
Yes,
he was one of Nigel Farage's MPs. He was somebody who he was telling us was part of this great new team of his.
Indeed. Quick line, Dan, if you would, 20 seconds if we can. Tony Blair back on the scene once a month. I think he must put it in his to-do list. He pops up with a new line. This time, Labour have got it horribly wrong. They're veering to the left and they lack a convincing long-term plan for Britain. Dan?
I mean, it's classic Tony Blair, isn't it? As you say, he does these interventions. It's basically, if you do anything that's different to what I would do, you do. You know, what Labour really needs is more Tony Blair. That worked in 97. It's not going to work 30 years later.
You're right. Dan, thank you. As ever, good to see you. Dan Hodges, commentator at the Mail on Sunday. Thank you to him. By the way, a reminder, we are still seeing and following, giving you updates on a fire in Golders Green. It's incredible footage that we've been sent here at Talk. According to reports, it is the site, this is according to reports, at the site of the Kosher Kingdom, which is the biggest kosher supermarket in Golders Green. You can see from those images, if you're watching, that it appears to be a pretty significant fire. It's on the main road. It's exactly the same spot the King visited just 2 weeks ago. And it's also literally just around the corner from the ambulance arson attack just a couple of months ago. So no confirmation there are connections, purpose, arson, anti-Semitic. None of that has been established. There could be a far simpler reason, but either way, it is a huge blaze. Emergency services are attending, and full updates as we have it. We've also been talking about your energy bills. 13% rise on the way. The price cap is altered from July, according to Ofgem. Let's speak with Claire Coutinho, Shadow Energy Secretary, also Shadow Minister for Equalities. Claire, good morning to you.
Good morning.
The good news just keeps on coming, right?
Yes, well, I mean, what a horrible morning with the news of Golders Green. I mean, look, we don't know the cause of this one yet, but we have seen this horrible rise of anti-Semitism and people being targeted in this country because they're Jewish, and it's just appalling. It is totally appalling, and yes, I'm afraid to say what a sad morning to see yet more of these things happening to the Jewish community.
Indeed. Back to more of your brief, energy. Of course, this is perhaps expected news, but it's massively significant. 13% rise, not a 3% or a 1. 13% rise in energy price cap from July. Claire Coutinho.
Well, I mean, this is the, I think, the horrors of Ed Miliband's approach is that before we even got to the Iran war, bills had already gone up by £200 because of the choices that he was making. Now we find ourselves in a crisis situation and energy bills are going up again, so it's piling yet more pain on consumers. And that's why my argument has been for a long time now that we have to prioritise cheap energy because the world is getting more unstable. We need to make sure that we can have cheaper electricity in this country. We need to make sure that we think about our gas supply because we are going to need some gas going forward. We need to double down on nuclear. And I'm afraid if we don't do those things, we are only going to become more reliant on others and we're going to become more vulnerable. And as I said, the world is getting more dangerous. We see that every single day and we have to start completely changing our mindset of our energy system and what it's there to do.
If the Conservatives were in power, Claire, my energy bill, say, is £200 a month, thereabout, and in winter it is, sometimes more. How quick could the Conservatives get that down to £100 a month?
So we've got two policies that we set out, scrapping the carbon tax and these old wind subsidies that are in the system, which would cut electricity bills by 20%. We could do that immediately, and then over the long term about 75% of your electricity bill, it might be a bit different now because of the price gap, but roughly that amount is actually non-commodity costs. And one of the things that you've seen, just to explain this point, is energy bosses have said even if gas went to zero, then energy bills would still be going up by 2030 because of Ed's approach. So you have to take a different approach. You have to reduce those costs as much as possible, take as many of these taxes and levies off of your electricity bill and bring down the cost of energy that you're buying in the wholesale market as well. So that's our plan. That's why we've got a cheap power plan. Like I said, the immediate thing we'd be able to do is that 20% bringing down of the cost of your electricity by cutting the carbon tax and renewable obligations. But on top of that, you just have to keep prioritising cheap energy in the system. Nuclear is one of the things I'm very passionate about. Yep. I think can do that. And making sure that you're using the North Sea where you can as well. But the whole problem that we've got at the moment, and one of the things that we've been talking about this morning, is that we have almost a miserablist approach to energy, which is making it harder for people to get, it's making it more expensive, it's making it more unreliable, and that's because we've prioritised decarbonisation over cheap energy, and doing that over a number of years has left us in the position that we are now with some of the highest cost electricity anywhere in the developed world. We have to end that mindset. Just
a final point on Ofgem. These are the obviously the people that oversee what our energy companies are doing and the like. I didn't know this. You would know this because, of course, you've held this brief, so you're aware of it. Apparently 2,000 people work at Ofgem. And if you'd have asked me to take a guess, I'd have said, oh, I don't know, maybe 12 people sit there, possibly half work from home. It's a little arrangement. They've got a little email set up, a WhatsApp group, and they make the magic happen. Why did 2,000 people work for our energy overseer?
So I've spoken about this before. When it started, it was 300 people. It's now ballooned to 2,000 people. So when I was in government, I only had 9 months, but I started a review of Ofgem because the other problem that you've got is it's meant to be focusing on consumers. The whole point of Ofgem is that its priority should be consumers, but I don't think that is the case anymore. I think actually its priority is net zero, and that's a problem. You need to have, if you're going to have an energy regulator that looks at cost, a number one priority, the only priority it should have is focusing on those costs to consumers. But as the Ofgem numbers have grown and grown and grown, as you said, it's 2,000 people now, bills have just gone up and up and up. So we're clearly not getting bang for buck out of all the additional people going into Ofgem in terms of seeing lower bills. Yeah. So again, when I talk about rewiring the energy system, you have to look at the regulators, you have to look at the incentives. That's the work that we're doing, is serious and hard work, but you've got to make the system work for consumers. At the moment, there is no voice in the industry that is actually putting consumers first. That's what we think politicians should be doing. That's why we focus on cheap power.
Claire, thank you. Claire Coutinho, live from College Green, Shadow Energy Secretary. She was, of course, previously under the last administration, the Energy Secretary. Thank you to her. 2,000 people working on. I don't know what the collective wage bill is for that, but I reckon they could shave a quid off everyone's monthly bill if they closed the thing down and started again. 2,000 regulators work, or 2,000 people work at the regulator. What on earth do they do? That is public money, by the way. And that's just one regulatory body among the dozens, if not hundreds, that the government have. They always expand. They never get smaller. There's never fewer of them. There's always more of them every flipping year. 0344 499 1000. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. Just coming up on 8:30, Ian Collins in for Jezza. It is Talk Breakfast. Man alive, we are absolutely rammed here. That breaking news, of course, we're keeping you abreast of as we get more detail. We'll bring it to you. Footage of what looks like a huge fire in Golders Green happening now. According to reports, it's the site of Kosher Kingdom, the biggest kosher supermarket in that area. It's on the main road. It's where the King was 2 weeks ago, just around the corner from that ambulance arson attack as well. No confirmation there is anything suspicious in that respect as yet, but naturally it's unsettling for those people in that area. We will bring you the latest. We're also talking about uniting the right. If you are a Restore supporter or a Reform supporter or even Ben Habib's Advance UK, and let's throw the Tories into this as well, how would you feel if they all announce we're going to come together, a kumbaya moment of the right, and bring you one coherent party? Because that's the only way we can really damage Labour at the next election. Would you support that? For some people, it's the worst idea ever. On this very point, let's get a voice note. Morning, Laura.
Morning, Ian. Laura in Wiltshire. Regarding uniting the right, I think it absolutely has to be done, but I think it absolutely won't happen. My impression is that Rupert Lowe and Ben Habib have got incredibly big egos, and they are a bit like jilted brides. I think Ben Habib is really a pressurising person, not really a politician, and I don't think Rupert Lowe is nearly organised enough. My understanding from people close to the top of Reform is that Nigel has no problem with tall poppies, but what he insists on is loyalty. And I think that's where it all went wrong. I have no idea what's going to happen, but I think the idea that the Tories and Rupert Lowe will get behind reform is probably zilch, which is really bad news for us. Anyway, great show.
Laura, thank you very much indeed. Absolutely spot on. I know people would say, if you'd have said to the Tories in 2010, before the election, if there was a hung parliament, would you form a coalition with the Lib Dems? Everybody would have laughed. He used to mention that Nick Clegg was a joke. That was his sort of standing line. Nick Clegg would have had nothing to do with it. Although this is a little bit different because this is really deeply personal. And of course, there's previous as well. Rupert Lowe used to be part of reform, of course. He was an integral part of it all. This comes in from Jenny, who says, let's not forget Rupert was a Tory until 1993. Where did he go? I mean, 1993 is 33 years ago. What was he after 1993? And it was the Tories under Kemi that gave Rupert one of their allocated seats on the Public Accounts Committee, giving him his public platform. That's strategy in action. Well, that rather feeds in, Jenny's point feeds into what many are saying, actually, that, I mean, I don't think it is this considered, that the Tories have secretly done a deal with Rupert Lowe, keep going, muck it up for reform. We can come in and win as the government, and Rupert, you can have a big seat at the table. But whilst that is not certainly not something that I believe has happened, the upshot could be the same. The upshot could well be that it does ultimately benefit the Conservatives. Let's get a voice note. Not a voice note, we've had a voice note. Let's get a call from George in Northampton. We were talking about your pets in hot weather. How do you deal with it, George? What have you got there? A couple of lions and a llama? What's happening?
Oh, I wish I did have a couple of lions and a llama. No,
Yeah.
I've actually, well, I'm down to 8 now. I've got 8 guinea pigs. I used to have 13, but we've got 8. Guinea pigs are not suited to hot weather. A lot of people think, I'll stick them in a hutch outdoors, they'll be great. They're not.
Is that why you're down to 8?
No.
Just
No,
old age?
No, well, I lost one last Sunday. He was 7 years old.
Okay.
I've still got another 2 7-year-olds and 4-year-olds, and there's a few. But yeah, once it gets to 26 degrees, a guinea pig can't sort of regulate its temperature that well. And of course, they're covered in fur, so it keeps them even warmer. The technique you had at the sort of start of the show, where you put a frozen bottle in the cage, is a good one. But always wrap it in a towel or put it in a sock, because that way they won't get freezer burns on their skin.
Okay, yeah, because that can happen to a human, right?
Yeah, that can happen to a human. If you sit on a block of ice, you can get a freezer burn.
Yeah.
The other thing is, don't put a fan directly on guinea pigs. Now I'm in the room at the moment where the guinea pigs live.
Did I just hear a guinea pig in the background?
Yes, I'm in a room with my guinea pigs.
Right, fantastic. You've got a guinea pig room. That's fantastic.
Yeah. Once we kicked my eldest daughter out, we took her room over to use for the guinea pigs.
The only way forward, frankly.
Yeah. Don't put a fan blowing directly on them, because they can get a chill. But what you do is you put a fan blowing across the floor, which moves the air around them.
Okay.
It's even better if you can put it so that the fan is actually blowing out the window and sucking the warm air out behind it.
Got it.
Yeah, it's all these silly things.
This is very good advice. You don't get this on one of those afternoon Channel 4 vet programmes, I'm telling you. What have they all got? They all got names?
Oh yes. You know, I've got Lorelei and Amora. I've got Hopscotch, Ted. That's Luna. Over there is Marshmallow, and there's Coco and Misty.
Right. Okay. And do they answer to their names, as far as you know? Or
not.
They're oblivious to their monikers.
They do and they don't. It's like, as I came up the stairs and came in here, Lorelei, who's one of the older ladies, is the alarm. She then sets everybody else off, saying, come, Dad's coming, let's have some food off him.
So she kicks off a squeak, and that's kind of contagious.
She kicks off, yeah.
It's always one.
And she starts them all running around.
So they know there's food on the way.
Oh, definitely, definitely. Yeah, they had their sort of breakfast and fresh hay at 5 to 6 this morning, and
nice, good
that's
time.
when I give them their time, give them that, and then I go downstairs and switch on talk, and
fantastic.
away we go, as they say.
Happy day. Talk and guinea pig. You see what a great combination for life. It should be taught in schools. This stuff. Love it, George. Great call.
Can I just say about when you were talking to that KC?
Yes,
it was making my blood boil.
I'm sure
it really was. They were not children, At 13 and 14, let's face it, only one of them was 13 at the time of the attack, and he was only aiding.
Yes, the other two were 14. That is old enough to know exactly what you're doing. And remember, this wasn't, it was a case of brutal rape of two young girls, but it was also the filming of it, the goading of it, the putting it on social media, the sharing of it, the constant lampooning of it. It was about as sinister as it gets. And as I said to Chris, I saw one commentator say that if this was the equivalent of an adult case, it will be treated as one of the worst possible and could have got 90. It's just short of a life sentence, which is not usually the kind of sentence that gets given out for those kind of crimes, sadly, but that's the case. This would have been seen as the most serious. George, thank you. Great call. George in Northampton. And his, did he say 8 he's got left or 9? 8 guinea pigs left. All kicking off there in the special room. Let's get a word with Richard Power Said, former Labour Party official. Good afternoon to you, Richard.
Hey, good morning, Ian. Nice to see you.
Oh, good morning. Sorry, yeah, I said afternoon, didn't I? Good afternoon. Well, we haven't got you on for your guinea pig knowledge, I can tell you that much. So
I'm sorry to hear it. I would have been delighted to.
I know it's your mastermind subject, isn't it? I know. Let's start off with Tony Blair then, because at one point in time, I'd imagine, obviously when you were a lot younger, he would have been seen as a heroic figure. Is that how you used to see Tony Blair, as this sort of all singing, all dancing saviour of all things Labour?
I think it's always a bit of a risk to see anybody as an all singing, all dancing saviour of anything, to be honest, Ian. Look, Tony Blair won 3 elections, incredibly impressive. We often forget about the fact that Labour's vote share actually reduced very significantly over those elections. That's the funny thing about our electoral system. It kind of hides the fact that somebody can lose popularity massively because of, for instance, the Iraq War and deindustrialization. It's a thing that people often fail to understand about the Labour Party. We started losing the red wall, under Tony Blair.
That's it. Yes, it's interesting because share is quite crucial, isn't it? Share isn't something Keir Starmer likes to talk about too much, of course, because otherwise you've got to raise the word Jeremy Corbyn, whose share was greater than Keir Starmer, so we get into that sort of territory. But his overarching point in this intervention, and he does, if nothing else, Tony Blair loves an intervention, Richard, doesn't he? He can't help himself. And he's been speaking on the BBC in the last couple of hours, last couple of minutes even, on this very point, that the Labour Party are drifting far too far to the left, and they lack a convincing long-term plan for Britain. Now, trying to take the left thing out of it, it is meant to be a centre-left party, if nothing else, and they shouldn't be apologising for that. But the long-term plan, I think, is interesting. If you stuck me against a wall with a gun pointed to my head and said, give me Labour's long-term plan, their objectives, their aims, I would have no idea, Richard. Do you?
I think there's kind of 2 major things that Labour's been doing over the last couple of years, which I think are really good things, right? One is massively increasing public investment. It's literally just like how much money is the state putting into the economy, not through welfare primarily, but more through investment in public services and through industrial policy. So basically the state making it easier to do business in various different ways. And often focusing on the things that create the most employment, the things that create commodities that we use, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's another thing which Labour's doing, which is kind of pulling potentially in a different kind of direction, which is things like massively increasing people's rights at work, their protections against dodgy bosses, and renters, the protections that renters get against dodgy landlords. And I think the thing is, right, if you're going to have we're looking at our society and we can see that people are really angry. And they're angry, I would say, about 2 different things. They're angry about the fact that real wages have stagnated since the financial crisis. And they're angry about the fact that we live in a really unfair society where people who've got wealth and power can kind of screw us over and never get in trouble about it. And I think you end up needing those two things. You need a government that's going to stimulate the economy in order to try to get real wages back up into a sensible and fair place. And then you also need a government that's going to protect us against the people who've got wealth and power. And I think that Labour's been doing a bit of that. It needs to be doing far more.
There isn't I mean, I don't doubt that they are perhaps the objectives. But there's such a thing as perception. Whatever the reality is, the perception is very different to that, Richard. The perception is that there's a lot of money being squandered, there's a lot of waste out there, there isn't any noticeable economic uplift from all of the things you've just mentioned. Nobody tangibly feels better off, not just because of energy bills or petrol, but wages and all the other issues of cost of living. There isn't a set of potholes in the road. There is a very real sense that we're a broken country, and it's got a bit more broken under Labour.
So the problem with the kinds of policies that I just articulated about public investment, industrial strategy, is that they are really slow acting, right? And the problem is that we've just not been doing them. We didn't do them very much under New Labour. We did them a bit. We didn't do them at all under David Cameron and the later Tory administrations. And so now we're playing catch up. And they were always going to be slow acting policies anyway. You can't quickly turn investment into jobs. So there are other things that the Labour Party needs to be doing in order to quickly help people with the cost of living. So that would be, for instance, nationalising bits of the energy system, nationalising the water companies. You could bring down people's bills by hundreds of pounds a year by doing that. It would involve government spending, but you'd be spending and getting an asset. So the government would be buying a thing that it would own, which is a better way of spending your money. And that's what Andy Burnham's proposing, and it's why I think Andy Burnham is taking the Labour Party, if he does become MP and indeed Prime Minister. That's why I think he's taking the Labour Party in the right direction.
Finally, do you, I mean, these are broad terms, left wing, right wing, a little bit left, centre right, etc. Blair's point about drifting too far to the left, I mean, I did say, and reasonably I hope, that, you know, it is the Labour Party, it's not meant to be a right-wing party. That said, in the broadest sense, as you see it, Richard, does the Labour Party need to go more Corbyn-y or more Blair-y?
I think it's always a mistake to talk about these things in terms of personalities. What the Labour Party needs to do is look at a society which is angry because people can see how rigged the system is and ask, how can we unrig that system, right? We've got a system where billionaires don't pay their taxes, and where billionaires control our media, and where billionaires influence our politics through their donations. I'm thinking, for instance, of Nigel Farage's secret £5 million donation.
It's not that secret. We're talking about it, aren't we?
Well, he tried to keep it secret, which is the problem, right? When you try to keep something secret and then you
But if you're not an MP and somebody gives you £5 million for whatever campaign you want to launch, that's up to them, isn't it? It's up to you.
That is literally the opposite of the law, Ian. The law is very clear that a year before you become an MP, if you're given money which is used for any political purposes, then you do need to tell the public about it. And he didn't, did he? And he's changed his tune about what it was used for over and over, because presumably, I mean, like, from where I'm sitting, from where most of the country's sitting, it just looks really corrupt, right? And that is exactly the kind of thing that we need to get out of our politics.
Richard, have you tried living in Clacton these days? It's an expensive place. It's not like the 1970s was. I mean, you need a few quid over there just for basic upkeep. I'm saying a lick of paint will cost you twice what it would cost over there in Southend.
I'm sure that all of the constituents in Nigel Farage's seat are all depending on billionaires for £5 billion quid secret donations.
But I mean, the billionaire media owner thing, I mean, that's always a cheap sort of lefty trope, isn't it? I mean, if you're a big media owner, then you might just also be a billionaire. I mean, that kind of goes with the territory if you're really successful. It's not a pejorative. It's a handshake of success, isn't it?
Ian, I'll encourage your listeners and your viewers to have a look at which media outlets are owned by billionaires and which media outlets are against higher taxes on billionaires, and you will find there is an exact overlap between those two groups.
Why would you be against higher taxes What's wrong with being against higher taxes on billionaires? Why would a billionaire want to pay more taxes?
Well, exactly.
They're already paying. They're already paying.
You've answered my question, haven't you?
No, it hasn't. Because they're already paying a gazillion in taxes. You're talking as if they don't pay any taxes.
Have
you seen Alan Sugar's tax bill? Oh, he's a good billionaire, is he?
Well,
because we get good billionaires, we get bad billionaires.
Again, you're answering my question for me, Ian. Billionaires pay a far smaller proportion of their wealth and income in tax than the rest of us do. And there's a very clear reason for that, right? It's because they are able to move their money around in clever ways that the rest of us can't. For many years now, governments have refused to try even to tax them higher and use that money to pay for decent public services, for dealing with the potholes, for stimulating the economy and creating jobs.
They employ hundreds of thousands of millions of people collectively across the planet, and thank goodness for that. We need more of these people. All of those people pay tax. They pay tax, they pay their rents, they pay their bills. They are contributing. Whatever percentage game we can play on this, and obviously a billionaire is, like anyone else, instinctively wants to keep their tax bill down as much as possible. But overarchingly, a company that employs 100,000 people, by definition, is going to be a positive. And you're talking about it like a kind of mad old Scargill-like Corbynite there, Richard. You're better than this, Richard Power Said. What's happened to you, man?
So you're talking about a version of capitalism that doesn't exist, Ian. It's like a mythical little unicorn. So if you look at how most billionaires became incredibly wealthy, they didn't do it through producing wealth, right? They did it through, whether it's like Elon Musk getting off like different government contracts and forcing the government into spending extra money on him. That's not producing wealth. It's about like exploiting the system and exploiting taxpayers at the same time. That's how most billionaires making money out of private equity. Again, it's about stealing money effectively, extracting it out of the economy rather than producing jobs. And the fact is, most people can see that we have an incredibly rigged system. And if you're trying to pretend to people that billionaires are on their side, they know you're not telling the truth to them.
Listen, I love talking to you, Richard. It might be 99% tosh from where I'm sitting, but I love the fact we're in a democracy and you can say it. Richard Power Said, former Labour Party official, with us with a healthy dose of cast iron nonsense at the end there. God bless him. And it's a democracy, right? This is Talk. Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk. It is Talk. 0344 499 1000. It's 10 to 9. Sue says, Yusuf and Jenrick having a disagreement. Isn't that a good thing? Why does everything have to be catastrophised? Fair point, actually, when you look at it like that. Oh, thank you, Suze. Loads of comment on Chris Dorr, the barrister we had on, talking about that horrendous rape case where there's going to be a review of the sentence. We'll see what that comes to. But Chris Dorr has definitely upset many of you. I'll try and bring you as many of those comments in the next section. We are also responding and bringing you up to date with that fire in Golders Green that's happening now. This is what looks to be a very serious fire. We understand it's the site of Kosher Kingdom, which is the biggest kosher supermarket in Golders Green. It's on the main road there, the same spot the King visited just a couple of weeks ago, and literally around the corner from the ambulance arson attack that we are now all way too familiar with. Let's get a word from Dove Foreman. Dove's a great-grandson of Holocaust survivor Lily Ebert, and it's great to have you on, Dove, although it's a grim day. We don't have, I should say, any evidence that this is a deliberate attack in Golders Green, and therefore we can't establish whether it's anti-Semitic or in the same vein as ambulances and other terrible incidents. But it would be fair to say that for the Jewish community in a obviously Jewish area, anything like this is deeply unsettling.
Absolutely. Good morning. Thank you for having me on. And I woke up this morning, I could smell the smoke and hear the sirens of the fire trucks. And we have to thank the incredible individuals who, of course, put their lives on at risk every single day, running into the line of fire, quite literally, to tackle these fires and make sure that we here in Golders Green, but all of us across the country, are safe. The cause of fire is still, of course, unknown, and we wait to see, but there are many who are speculating, and that's not a surprise given the spate of attacks we've seen. But as I think people should not rush to conclusion here, and we'll wait to hear what the authorities have to say.
How sad is it, Dove, that we would even, who would have thought, you know, if you and I were having a conversation 10 years ago, who would have thought this would even be, that we'd even speculate on this? You know, I think of your great-grandmother and all that she and others went through, and the millions that didn't survive. And that journey since then was never meant to take us to where we are now. This should not be the story of the United Kingdom in the 21st century, that we would even be speculating on anti-Semitic attacks of this magnitude.
Absolutely. The fact that, again, the cause is unknown, but so many think that this might be an arson attack, and so many were worried when they woke up, they saw the smoke and they heard the siren. Just shows where we are now as a country. My great-grandmother came here as a Holocaust survivor, having survived Auschwitz, trying to rebuild her life as a proud Jewish woman, and she succeeded in doing that. She had a large and loving Jewish family with 10 grandchildren, 38 great-grandchildren in her final year before she passed away in 2024, age 100. She had a great-great-grandchild in this country. She loved Britain, the Jewish community. If you go down Golders Green Road, you'll see the Union flag on every single lamppost because we love this great country. But so many people are questioning their future in this country, because almost every week now, in fact, not every week, almost every day, we hear another story of an anti-Semitic attack, whether that's an arson at a synagogue, at a Jewish shop, on the ambulances, or whether it's low-level anti-Semitism, like people being screamed at on the tube, on the bus, school children being told not to wear their blazers. I could go on and on. And myself,
I'm familiar with all of these stories, and we cover it often because it should be covered, Dove, as you know. I just find that juxtaposition of your great-grandmother surviving Auschwitz and her great-grandson in the 21st century waking up to the sound of sirens. Again, the Jewish journey, the human journey, however you want to look at it, has taken a pretty nefarious detour here.
Absolutely, and as I say, many Jews will have woken up today and will have worried about what this might have been and the cause behind it, and whether or not this is an anti-Semitic arson attack. The fact that we do worry, the fact that we do wake up to hear those sirens and worry what those sirens are about, just shows how sad and the situation that Jewish life has got to in this great country.
Absolutely. Dove, stay safe. Thank you for speaking with us. We will, I'm sure, speak again. Dove Foreman, he's the great-grandson of Holocaust survivor Lily Ebert. And that, again, I can only reiterate that point, that here, this is the United Kingdom in the 21st century. Anti-Semitic attacks of this kind of magnitude that people like Dove and others, and this largely affects the Jewish community, of course, but it affects others around. It affects, you know, somebody like myself who feels very passionately about this kind of area and these sort of stories. The idea that I would be reporting on this kind of stuff is just, that was not on the agenda. When I kicked off my work in this line, and someone had said to me, oh yeah, 25 years later, 30 years later, you'll be talking about anti-Semitic attacks in the UK. No, really? No, that was 30, 40 years before, not future. No, future. something's gone terribly wrong. We can all speculate. We do, again, I have to say, we have no idea what the root cause of this fire in Golders Green is, but naturally, because of the area that it's in, people will understandably speculate. And if you live in that area, particularly if you're Jewish, you will feel unsettled by any incident such as this. And waking up to the smell of smoke and sirens is not how it should be. When we get confirmation, when we find out more information, we'll bring it to you here first on Talk. It's just gone 5 to 9. Let's get some sports news.
90 minutes in 90 seconds. From The Sun.
Let's speak with Arsenal reporter Josh Hall, who's still heady and giddy after the amazing way the season ended, of course. Josh, morning to you.
Morning, thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure, but it's not Arsenal we're talking about here this morning. Well, not fully, at least. It's Crystal Palace to start with. Conference League final.
Yeah, a massive moment in their history, a first ever European final. You look back at when Oliver Glasner joined the club in 2024, they were in sort of a moment of disarray, and since he's come in, they've won the FA Cup, they've won the Community Shield, and now they could win their first ever European trophy tonight against Rayo Vallecano. And what a way for him to bow out, because we know it's going to be his last game as manager of the club as well.
Indeed. So huge night for Palace. I have to bring Arsenal back into it. I know you guys are absolutely... I mean, many of my Arsenal mates still haven't gone to sleep. A mate of mine, Alicia, one of our producers, her partner, he's a big-time Arsenal fan, and she said people have been congratulating him as if he plays for Arsenal. It's been like that, hasn't it? Oh, well done, congratulations, you know. It's like, as a Chelsea fan, I don't quite share the euphoria, but I understand how it feels, having been there once or twice in the past. But this weekend, of course, I mean, it really doesn't get any bigger for Arsenal. I don't know whether you guys would put Premier League victory or Champions League victory, which one tops it for you, but what we do know is that the PSG, who you guys are up against at the weekend, this is not like playing Everton at home. This is not like Leeds. This is not like Wolves. This is a big match, and you're up against the big guys here.
Yeah, it's going to be a really, really difficult game for Arsenal. I don't think they've been to sleep yet either, the players, by the way. I think they've been out partying.
Yeah, well, I hope they have by Saturday.
Well, this is the sort of thing it could help them. You know, I think winning that Premier League title has taken the pressure off them for this Champions League final. I wonder whether there's been any English team that's been in a Champions League final in the last 20 years that has been.
Conflict breaks out anywhere in the world, it has consequences here at home. Talk War is your definitive national security briefing. From the conflict in Ukraine to the tensions in Gaza and the latest escalation with Iran, this is where you'll find comprehensive comment and expert analysis with multiple updates throughout the day. The Talk War podcast from Talk, available on the Talk app or wherever you get your podcasts. across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk. Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is indeed Talk Breakfast Morning, 9:05. Ian Collins in for Jezza. He's back next week, of course. Lots to get through. We're talking about Tony Blair every now and again. I never thought I'd live through an era after Blair walked the plank, that we'd still be every month talking about Tony Blair. He's always back with a new initiative, and this time he's saying that Labour are doomed if they lurch to the left, and there's no way around it. He argues that they have no convincing long-term future plan. Well, he might be right about that. Meanwhile, the party that says they do have a plan is Reform UK. Bit of a fallout going on over there. Zia Youssef and Robert Jenrick, the former contradicting or clarifying the latter on immigration policy, or deportation policy, as it turns out. This was done very publicly, and it seems to have upset some people. What does it mean for Reform? And it does beg the wider question with right-wing parties, Reform, Restore, Advance, and others as well. Throw the Tories in there too. Would the United Kingdom, or would the right of the United Kingdom, be more welcoming if all of those parties got together? A kind of kumbaya moment on the right, all merging from one cohesive hymn sheet. Would that work, and would you support it? For many, it is the worst possible scenario, even if it resulted in a win. For others, it's a no-brainer. Your thoughts on that? 0344 499 1000. And immigration figures as well. This weekend, we got them out yesterday. The numbers, 1,000 young men came across the United Kingdom on a rubber boat across the Channel. The sun was shining, the sea was calm. What better way to check into the Four Seasons for lifetime's worth of board and lodgings? You can't knock that, can you? Our lines are open, 0344 499 1000. On that very issue of uniting the right, here's a voice note from Ken. Morning, Ken.
Good morning, Ian. Ken here in Dorset. Some very interesting points regarding uniting the right from Laura in Wiltshire. And I think she's pretty much on the money. And of course, uniting the right is very desirable for those of us who are that way inclined to think. But the question is surely under who? None of the leaders get on. So who would lead this united right coalition? Cheers, Ian. Great show.
Thank you very much indeed for that, Ken. Lovely voice note as well, 6 minutes after 9. Let's get a word from Trevor Kavanagh, former political editor at The Sun, still with his eye very much on the ball. Morning to you, Trevor.
Good morning, Ian.
Bear with me on this. Years ago, I was talking to Terry Wogan's agent. Now, you're probably thinking, where the heck is this going? And she said to me, Jo was her name, she said, life was very simple when I started in this business. She said, I used to come into work in the morning. She worked just off the King's Road. And she said, all I had to do was ring BBC One and ITV and find out what's going on and whether there was any jobs for my clients or any of the like. 2 phone calls. She said, fast forward 20 years. I can't do that because there's 2,002 different outlets making programmes and I don't know what to do. Similarly, when you first came into politics, and there you were in Westminster in 1876, Trevor, I don't want to date you too much, but it goes back a bit, and your pedigree is solid and much respected. There it was. There was Labour, there was the Tories, and somewhere in the middle was the Lib Dems. There was a press officer, there was a spokesman, there was the chairman, whatever. Very, very simple times. Today, you're having to do what Terry Wogan's agent did. You've got to phone around God knows how many places just to get a story.
This is absolutely true, Ian, and I agree with your old friend Jo. I started in politics when Margaret Thatcher was Prime Minister, and if a big story broke in the middle of the night, I wouldn't even need to ring her press secretary, Bernard Hingham, because you would know from back navigation, the line of route, the thought processes, exactly how the Prime Minister of the day and her cabinet, as a result, would respond. You could write the story without talking to anybody else. Now it's just a vociferous bunch of squabbling people, and I think Ken was absolutely right on the money just now when he said that you ain't going to get the united right. It's as bad as the old-fashioned left-wing conspiracy sort of era of the life of Brian again, isn't it?
Yeah, indeed. And there we have this business on the right with. Again, these are parties that just didn't exist a very short period of time ago. Obviously, Reform have had different kind of, there was the Brexit Party, and I know UKIP are a different party, but there are obvious correlations between them and now with Nigel Farage. So they've been around a bit. They've still only got, 7 MPs at the moment. So batting above their weight in one respect, leading the polls in another respect. And then Rupert Lowe, who was one of the aforementioned, sets out on his own, and he's now making inroads, particularly with this by-election coming up, and his position, his party's position, could be absolutely pivotal.
Yes, it could, and it's really sad to see, but I do think that perhaps for the first time in 40 years, I agree with absolutely every word that Tony Blair has said here. Yeah. And the timing of his statement, which is really like a sort of political hypersonic missile into the middle of the Macclesfield by-election. Very carefully timed, very well pitched, and very carefully articulated, is not an endorsement of Labour. You could interpret what he's had to say is anybody but Labour here. And I think that if you just weed your way through the words and the criticisms of this Labour government, you could almost hear him saying, vote for Kemi Badenoch and the Tories.
Well, that's, to me, the potential interesting upshot of this, because politics, as you know, Trevor, is full of these kind of strange twists and turns, and something that would have been unimaginable a few minutes before suddenly happens. And I suppose you could even cite 2010 for that. If somebody had said to you a couple of weeks before that election that the Lib Dems were going to be in government, we'd have laughed them out the room. But these things can happen. And I wonder, similarly, whether the Tories can make a bit of a comeback here. The leader is more popular than the party, it seems, at the moment. But Kemi Badenoch doing really well. Can she rebrand them enough to start to gain some decent traction? The last local elections a couple of weeks back didn't show that, but is there still time for her to make a difference and sort of return messianic-like as the sensible adults in the room while Rupert and Nigel are battling it out? The Tories are back. Is that possible?
I think it's absolutely possible. It's a question of time now, because if there is not going to be a general election until for another 3 years, then she does have some time. But there is now a growing feeling that were Andy Burnham to somehow win Macclesfield, the first thing he would do is to call a snap general election while he was, in inverted commas, popular. I think that would be a mistake. I don't think, actually, just looking at it from here, a long way from the action, that he is going to win Macclesfield. I think that things are falling apart beneath his feet, and indeed beneath Labour's feet generally. I think that the problem is for the right is the splits you've just been describing between all the various factions on the Reform and Restore Party wing, and Tommy Robinson in the right extreme corner. So what she's saying, what Kemi Badenoch has been saying and doing over the last 6 months since she really swept back onto the public stage, is really healing the view of the Tory party, which was wrecked almost beyond repair in the administration of the last several prime ministers under the Tory party. I think that she is emerging as a distinct voice, someone with a lot to say, which people are responding to very favourably.
It's going to be interesting how this Makerfield plays out. You said that you don't think it's a straight road and necessarily even winnable for Andy Burnham. Does that suggest Reform will be the recipients of that seat with your analysis, Trevor?
I think so. I mean, look, the Restore incursion is beginning to have an effect. But I think that all of the evidence that's emerged about Burnham and his U-turns and the appalling attitude towards the issue on trans issues, on the European Union, rejoining the European Union, and welfare spending and trashing the bond markets. I think people in Macclesfield are not stupid. They're well aware of what's going on. They've been used as a means of a maverick, ambitious politician to get his seat back in Parliament where he can make a bid for the leadership. And they're not very happy about the fact there's been a forced by-election caused by the scandalous behaviour of the incumbent Member of Parliament. So these sort of factors weigh in no matter what the opposition is. But Reform has done very well in that area already in the local elections. And I think that despite the splits in the on the right, they will power their way to a victory of some sort.
Let's talk about Tony Blair, Trevor, because he does pop up a lot. A politician you would know well. He's clearly got an incredible skill set. Nobody has ever disputed that. Things went a bit wrong with Iraq, but prior to that, you know, this was a man that knew how to win elections, seriously knew how to change a party as well. And we remember all the hoops and hurdles he had to go through pre-1997 to get his party on side and to endorse his sort of agenda for change. He's now urging Labour, really, to find a direction. It's quite difficult to spot a direction. I think you and I have spoken about this before, even when you've been doing politics as long as you have, and I've been on this game for a while myself. We all thought when Starmer came in that there was a plan, a bit like a Tony Blair plan, you know, that there was going to be something. He'd had 5 years to get this thing together. Sue Gray was in prime position to assist him on that first 100 days thing. And it never happened. They came. Their first big announcement was taking away winter fuel payments for pensioners. I mean, it just fell apart as quick as they were victorious. The whole thing turned to muck overnight almost. There was no plan. And I think Blair has rather picked up on this point, hasn't he? He's picked up on the fact that there needs to be a sort of, you know, we should all be able to loosely name and spot and point to the direction of our government. And with this one, I think this is an objective view, Trevor. I don't think we can.
Well, it's very, very difficult. And the thing is that what Tony Blair has said is absolutely spot on. It's a little bit late, and you have to bear in mind that many of the seeds of the problems that we face today were sown during the period of the Blair government, not least the human rights laws, the embracing of the European Union, its open borders, and so on. I mean, he's now saying that the government has to do whatever it takes to stop small boats. Well, 3 cheers to that, but would he have been able to do so? He's the one who opened the floodgates in the first place. But beyond that, if I can just say that I do welcome what he's had to say, and as I said earlier, the timing of it, because he would have known full well when he uttered this speech that he was speaking literally days or a couple of weeks before the by-election, which is so important. And he's talking about this government coming into office without a plan, and they were warned in advance of that, not least by of all people, Peter Mandelson, who stated that you don't come into government at a difficult time without a clearly stated manifesto. And then when you implement the plans that you've laid out in that manifesto, people will know what they expect because they voted for it. They didn't do that on this occasion. They came in with a blank sheet of paper, a lot of lies, which they only emerged after they won their landslide. And they began, as you talk about, national insurance contributions, the minimum wage rises, the pay deals for the trade unions, and many other things. The welfare boom, which is really, as Tony Blair rightly says, going to kill the economy over the next 5 or 10 years. Net zero, which is crazy, but it's the core of this government's economic policy. And I think that what he said most revealingly is that Labour has an almost infinite capacity for self-delusion. And that is the case, and it's completely split down the middle, or in various facts, left or right and centre, mostly left. They are not going to respond to whoever takes over, whether it's Andy Burnham, Wes Streeting, or if Keir Starmer continues in office. They are not going to respond to any measures that Tony Blair has laid out, which are essential to its recovery and the survival of this country.
On that point, Trevor, thank you for your time. Trevor Kavanagh, former political editor at The Sun, with us here on the programme. Let me remind you that the by-election in Makerfield is the 18th of June. These are the candidates that are standing. Jake Austin for the Liberal Democrat, Count Binface for the Count Binface Party, Andy Burnham, the Labour Party, Dan Clark, the Libertarian Party, John Dyer, Independent, Ed Gemmell, Climate Party, Paul Gould, Independent, Alan Howling, Lord Hope, Official Monster Raving Loony Party, Robert Kenyon, Reform UK, Robert Pownall, Protect the Wild, Rebecca Shepherd, Restore Britain, Sarah Wakefield, Green Party, Peter Ward, Rejoin EU, and Michael Winstanley, the Conservative Party. They are the Makerfield candidates for the by-election on June the 18th. Comment coming in from you. Paul says, if Kemi and Nigel could work together, now that is a dream team to obliterate Labour. I sense it would probably come down to that. I don't know whether Restore would find them. I mean, if those two parties decided to go it alone, Restore could still gather momentum. I mean, they stood candidates at well, they didn't under the name of Restore, but they stood some candidates in the local elections, and I think I'm right in saying they won every council seat that they stood in. Not under the name of Restore, as I understand it. Rupert Lowe could seriously get back in as a lone MP at the next election based on his current popularity, and he seems to be doing pretty sterling work in his neck of the woods and also in Parliament. If you keep your eye on the parliamentary pages online, look at what he's doing in some of those accounts committee hearings, holding power to account and talking about money waste. He's a businessman. He knows how this stuff works, and he's as bemused as anyone else. But could his party do nationally what some are suggesting they might do in a by-election? Is that possible? Would a Kemi and Nigel connection, does that seem more palatable to some? Ian says, Tony Blair was never a Labour man and never a socialist, just a slimy PM who's made millions out of politics. He needs to keep his nose out. If you talk to Peter Hitchens, by the way, Peter Hitchens reckons that Blair was the absolute ultimate socialist. And what happened was he had a veneer of Blairism over it. You know, in the same way that China is called the People's Republic of China, as if it's some kind of cooperative shareholding society where everybody has a little stake, rather than the dictatorial, communist, oppressive regime that it actually is. It was kind of more that than anything, according to Hitchens, that actually Labour under Blair was very socialist. I tend to agree with Ian, actually, in the upshot of all of that. Is uniting the right way forward? Let's get a voice note from Sue. Sue, morning to you.
Good morning, Ian. This is Sue from Macclesfield. Just saying, Rupert Lowe's Restore UK voters, they need to really get behind the Reform Party, because this is just going to go on and on and on, and we're just going to end up getting battered by the lefty Labour lot for evermore. And I think Rupert Lowe, by not bowing down out of the by-election, is really making matters worse for himself, because at the end of the day, if he scuppers the only chance that we've got of getting anywhere near power in this country again, I think a lot of people won't be joining his party, and I just really think it's not going to grow anymore. I just think he really needs to sort themselves out and join together. All right, thank you. Bye.
Conflict breaks out anywhere in the world, it has consequences here at home. Talk War is your definitive national security briefing. From the conflict in Ukraine to the tensions in Gaza and the latest escalation with Iran, this is where you'll find comprehensive comment and expert analysis with multiple updates throughout the day. The Talk War podcast from Talk, available on the Talk app or wherever you get your podcasts. Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
We are, of course, responding as well and try to get more information on that fire in Golders Green. This news broke around about half an hour, 40 minutes ago. According to reports, it's the site of Kosher Kingdom, which is the biggest kosher supermarket in Golders Green. It's on the main road there, for those who know that area. It's a known area, main road, exactly the same spot where the King visited just a couple of weeks ago. It's also literally just around the corner from those ambulance arson attacks a little while back as well. Now, there's no suggestion at the moment that this is an arson attack or an anti-Semitic attack of any form. Literally no confirmation. But you can understand that if you live in that area and that is your neck of the woods, and particularly if you are Jewish, it's a very unsettling picture. And our previous guest, Dov, pointed out to us to be woken up with sirens and the smell of smoke is a destabilising experience if you are Jewish. I can't believe I'm saying this, Jewish in the 21st century in the United Kingdom, the safest place you should be. That was always the Jewish journey, wasn't it? As his great-grandmother can attest, to come here because of what you were escaping. This comes in from Mark. He says, as far as I can tell, Jews have always integrated seamlessly in Britain. This can only be because the civilizational values are so closely aligned. I therefore see attacks on Jews in Britain as attacks on non-Jews in Britain. It's absolutely right. You can be a victim or a victor in life. And when people talk about minority struggles, then have a word with the Jews, because they'll tell you how it's done to be a minority. The Jews are such a small part. I can't remember what the percentage is. It's so tiny in this country. And when groups talk, they are discriminated against that and other. And, you know, we don't have the equal approach or values or opportunities as others. Just talk to Jews about this, because Jews will explain, actually, if you want to be a victim, yeah, go nuts, mate. You can be one. You can be one forever. And some will make a living out of being a victim even, believe it or not. And it's a disposition that some people feel more comfortable in, because you can forever state something is somebody else's fault. The Jews took a slightly different approach, and they thought, we're not having this old lark. We've come from the most horrific settings and backdrop of a Holocaust, where 6 million of our own people were executed, murdered, in the most horrific ways, including children. So we'll go the victor route rather than the victim route, if you don't mind, because we've been the victims and we don't like it. And this is the way forward. And Jews have absolutely assimilated in the most extraordinary, admirable and seamless fashion. And as was pointed out there by Mark, it is a closely aligned set of values. It's kind of as simple as that. Why do politicians, when they try to talk about everybody can have their own values and you can have your own ideas and standards, and yeah, you can, of course you have your own opinions, of course you have your own backstory, of course you have your own ethnic roots, and nobody anywhere wants to change that. In fact, it's great that people have different backstories. It's wonderful that we can work in that way. But a core set of values will only work if there's harmony. That will only ever work as a good, forward-thinking, cohesive, close, intelligent, progressive, forward-thinking society. Only. There's no other way, I promise you. There's just no other tried and tested method. If you speak from, you know, a similar set of bullet points and your to-do list looks rather similar to the fella next door, then I promise you, this place will rub along much better. And that's what's lacking. And that's not for the Jews or the Christians or anyone else in this country to learn, other than those that don't go by that rather basic rule. And if you don't go by that, you'll pay the price. It's as simple as that. And you'll always feel like an outsider. 0344 499 1000. Lots to get through. We are, of course, talking about the Jenrick and Yusuf row over Reform's deportation plans as well. That's only there's nothing wrong with having a disagreement, by the way. It's not really a disagreement, and it only needed a clarification, but it was done quite publicly, which has set the sniffer dogs onto Reform. So what's going on here? Why would Zia Yusuf so publicly berate Robert Jenrick? Let's speak with Alex Wilson, Reform UK London Assembly member. Alex, morning to you. Now, I know you're going to say to me, look, you're a proud Reform member. There's nothing to see here. The press are making it up. It was just a very brief error and everything's tickety-boo now. Have I taken the words out of your mouth there?
Well, good morning. Before I come on to that, I would just like, if I may, just to pass comment on what you've just been talking about with this fire in Golders Green.
Please do.
Obviously, this follows a succession of incidents, arson. We don't know what the cause of this is yet, but there's a clear pattern that's been happening in that locality and in London, affecting the Jewish community over the weeks, including the horrific stabbings where the police officers intervened very bravely. So it must be terrifying to be a Jew in London at the moment, and that simply isn't good enough. On a regular basis, I'm holding the Mayor to account and the Met Police to account. Last week, we had the Crime Committee on the London Assembly, that's a committee that I'm part of, and the Deputy Commissioner acknowledged that Jewish Londoners, the figures on hate crime, but eight times more likely to be targeted towards Jewish communities than they are any other community. So that's the context that this is operating in. We've allowed this culture of anti-Semitism to fetter on London streets, the near weekly hate marches that happen. I'm sure all of that is very much connected. We'll see what the cause of this fire is later. Hopefully we'll find out a bit more. But
Indeed. I mean, if this is a business, it's a tragedy. Yes, it's a tragedy regardless of the reasons, but it would make it just so much more disturbing if we discover that there is an anti-Semitic and a deliberate attack resulting in this fire. But we will, of course, keep people updated. So Reform then, how's everything looking? Because, there's been a bit of a row, bit of a public row, as I was just saying. Thoughts on that one, if you would, Alex?
Well, I wouldn't call it a row. I'd call it a clarification. And Zia is well within his rights to do that as the spokesman on Home Affairs. It's his policy area, and he just wanted to make sure that the full details were confirmed. But what this has really spotlighted this as an issue in particular. We know that we have a housing crisis, particularly in London. But in London, nearly half, according to the 2021 census, nearly half of occupants of social housing are foreign born. Now, okay, some of those now have British citizenship, but a lot still don't. And the two of them together, absolutely right to highlight this as an issue because no other party is talking about it. We cannot continue being the food bank of the world, and we need a policy that's robust that stops the incentive for people coming here. And yes, some people are going to have to leave.
Alex, stay with us for 1 second. Your line is just slightly being a little mischievous. We'll try and get you back on a better line. I want to talk to Neil while we get Alex back on a better line in Buckinghamshire on this Reform Restore issue. What are you making of this, Neil? Morning to you.
Morning. I just think that Rupert and Nigel will never work together. Never. Because obviously they've big egos. Like you say, politicians shouldn't have egos, but I think their egos clash too much. Kemi Badenoch, she's got too many wet liberals in her party, so there's no way that they can rejoice. They're not a right-wing party, never have been for the last 14 years. So that's never, ever going to happen. So I think, personally, if Rupert Lowe keeps saying what a good patriot he is, he has to stand his candidate down. But he doesn't, because he's too egotistical. And he will not back down over Nigel Farage. He still thinks he's totally within the right. And that's the problem. And if people say they're patriots, prove it. Put your money where your mouth is.
And there is,
but then by-election.
What are you meant to do, though? If you are, like Rupert's position, and I know this is only his position, Rupert's position would be that he was so badly treated with reform through mischief, innuendo, false accusations and goodness knows what, that even involved the police. It got that bad. Again, these are just his words, his version of events, as it were, that he could never, ever go back to that. It would be unthinkable. Is that I mean, you're right. The upshot is clearly that he's likely to scupper reform's chances at forthcoming by-elections. But can you understand why he would... he's got a right to stand, hasn't he? Or his right to stand his candidates. But simultaneously, he can still hate Nigel Farage.
Yeah, everyone's got a right. That's the whole thing about democracy. Yeah. But if you keep opening your mouth and saying what a patriot you are, what a patriot, stick your money where your mouth is. At the end of the day, you've got... They all say, Mr Starmer even said, country before party. Well, that ain't worked. Now, Rupert Lowe should now put the country before his party and his ego. And he should stand aside and say to people, me and Nigel, yes, we've got differences. Yes, I was treated badly. But if you want a left-wing government, then don't vote for reform. But if you want to get rid of the left-wing government, vote for reform.
All right.
He will get more credibility from doing that than Nigel will. You know what I mean? It's a win-win situation for Rupert Lowe.
I get it. Neil, thank you. Neil in Buckinghamshire. We have Alex Wilson back with us. He is, of course, a Reform UK London Assembly member. Back on a better line, we hope, Alex. I mean, I don't know if you heard what our last caller had to say there, but essentially many people saying the same thing. You guys have got to get into bed together. Reform, restore, advance, maybe even the Conservatives in there, Alex. What do you say? Kumbaya, let's have a big party.
Well, look, I wish the split had never happened, and obviously it's not helpful. But the idea that we can get back into Rupert, I'm afraid, is just for the birds. His record has always been one of being unwhippable, uncontrollable, driven by ego and spite. You look at how he made the decision to step down in the 2019 general election, long before the Brexit Party stepped down against Conservative candidates. We weren't going to stand in the Kingswood by-election in 2024. Then he announced he was the candidate. I was at a rally in Doncaster where immediately before Richard Tice's leader's speech, Rupert spoke, and the only memorable thing from his speech was saying how wonderful it would be if Nigel was leader. So the guy is unpredictable, unwhippable, uncontrollable, and yeah, it's a shame it's happened this way, but unfortunately there isn't a future for him with reform. Now, that doesn't mean, however, that people who are considering voting Restore should not come back, because ultimately we have a test on here. Big opportunity, not just in this by-election, but across the country as a whole. When it comes to the general election, we have a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to smash the uni party, the old political system, and get Labour out and not let the Tories back in. But we can only do that if we all pull in that same direction, and Nigel's the man to do that.
Alex, thank you. We just about got through on that line, but it was breaking a bit again. Alex Wilson, Reform UK London Assembly member, and thank you for his comments as well on Golders Green just before that. With that in mind, Sue says the fact that we did not have anti-Semitism in this country for any significance until Islamic extremism came along, it is going to get worse for all of us the more they are given the licence to expand their culture. And this is Islamic extremism. We're seeing it in the West Midlands. The football match debacle is great evidence of that. Sort of local leaders coming out tribal-like, talking about our territory and all the rest of it, while mooching around, in a manner and a swagger and a set of speeches that would say anything but this sounds like Britain. This comes from Catesby, who says, with respect, the change directly correlates with, this is anti-Semitism, the change directly correlates with high levels of immigration from anti-Semitic cultures. What I find worrying is the corrosive effect on young Brits who are being manipulated and influenced by this old hatred under the guise of the pro-Palestinian movement. Absolutely spot on. It is that whole Middle East issue that is somehow anti-Israel issue that is being taken out on innocent Jews who may not even be Israeli, by the way, it should be said. 0344 499 1000. We're talking about a lot of things, the serious stuff, as you just heard, Reform and Restore and the Conservatives getting it together, immigration across the Channel, and we've also been talking about guinea pigs. I'm not kidding you. Morning, Danny.
Hi Ian, great show. Danny from Bedfordshire here. Regarding keeping your animals cool. I build garden rooms, all shapes and sizes for all different purposes. We've just built a garden room specifically for guinea pigs, and the lady had an aircon system fitted at a cost of £2,500 to keep them cool or warm all year round. That's going extra. But great show, mate. Thank you.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Talk. Good morning. Welcome. The home of common sense. We are back. My goodness, so much stuff to get through. By the way, the other thing we talked about, we were discussing strange ways that people try to keep their... Look, I know we're a very serious news organisation. We do all the breaking stuff, but we did depart into how can your pet survive in hot weather, which then got into the confusion of the word dachshund and the word Datsun. Datsun, of course, was a car. Dachshund is an ugly dog. Now, I know I'm going to upset some dashing owners, but they ain't winning any prizes, are they, those things? Anyway, Kaz says, I had a bright orange Datsun Sunny Coupe when I lived in Jersey in the mid-90s. No MOT required back then. The wing mirrors were fixed to the bonnet. It was brilliant. It felt like deluxe for a 20-year-old driver whose previous car was a rusty old Citroën Diane, says Kaz. You see, those memories of your first car. Let's move to, well, across the globe. Julia Gillard got heckled in Wales this week for her stance on women's rights. A lot of criticism that Australia is not protecting biological women like the UK due to our Supreme Court ruling. Let's speak with Sophie Ellsworth, News Corp, Australia's Europe correspondent. Sophie, good morning to you.
Good morning, Ian.
Firstly, I'm going to ask you a question, OK? I've been to Australia a couple of times, so I know that neck of the woods, and I love the place. We were just talking to Neha, one of our vision mixers there. Now, she's Indian, and we asked her about do Indians keep guinea pigs? Now, she almost fell off her chair laughing at this idea that you would keep a guinea pig in your house or your garden. Do Australians do the guinea pig thing?
It's something maybe a few decades ago. It's not as big as it is now. You put a guinea pig out the back in a little cage and it runs around and eats grass, and
that's it.
I don't really like them, if I'm honest.
No, I have to say it's essentially just a sort of a disguised rat, isn't it? Any of those things.
And look, we
Gerbils,
prefer
hamsters.
things like spiders and snakes in Australia, and crocodiles and sharks. We go a bit hardcore.
Love a funnel web, don't you?
We love a funnel web.
Love a funnel web. That could kill you as soon as look at you. I went to Melbourne Zoo and held, I was doing a radio thing, and held a frilled lizard. You know those things?
I do.
Usually seen in the outback and the like. They're the things that stick their neck through, stick their head through a hole in the fence, don't they? Then they open up their frill. Then they get stuck in the fence. This is amazing evolution, or just animal kingdom. You're stuck in the fence, then a dingo comes along and eats the darn thing. So it's a bad life, a frilled lizard.
I do laugh, though, when I moved here to the UK, a lot of, still now, people say, oh my gosh, how do you survive over there? You've got crocodiles, you've got sharks, you've got snakes. You know, they don't all come out and jump out from the bushes and bite us. It's quite safe to live in Australia.
That's true. And I never, other than Melbourne Zoo was the only place I really saw some dangerous wildlife. I was at a barbecue in Melbourne, though, and I did just mischievously, as the token pom, just go, oh, look, there's a funnel web. And that was like, and everyone went, what?
No, don't do that.
Don't do that.
You won't be here during the show if you do that.
No, I know. That's a dangerous thing. There is a little web behind you, though, I have to say. So, Julia Gillard, former Prime Minister of Australia, of course. She was born in Wales, wasn't she?
Correct.
She was born in Wales. And she's come under a bit of criticism. Tell us what she's done.
Sure. So a couple of days ago, I went to Wales. I was at the Hay Festival, the well-renowned writers and literary festival.
The good and the great go to the Hay Festival.
Exactly.
Yes.
Quite a beautiful
That's
drive.
why we weren't there.
It's quite a beautiful drive to get there. She was speaking on a panel, and she was talking about women in politics.
Yeah.
And normally at these things, Ian, as you appreciate at these festivals, there's time at the end to ask questions. At this particular panel, there was no time to ask questions. Now, Julia Gillard has come under a lot of fire in recent weeks because in Australia, we are claim to be going a bit mad because we're protecting biological men to come into women's spaces. And this has been hugely controversial. The legislation to do this was changed under her when she was Prime Minister. So to cut a long story short, when she was at this event a couple of days ago, there was no opportunity to ask questions. A female protester got up and held a banner and said, Julia Gillard, you are the destroyer of women's rights.
Wow.
Because there's been a historic case in Australia that has determined that a woman was discriminated against by being kicked out of a women's only app. So this has been really controversial, Ian, because the concern in Australia, to really simplify it, is that biological women and their spaces are not being protected because the legislation no longer now in Australia determines what is a male and female. There's no definition. This
is curious to me because my perception of Australia, and I know it a little bit, but it's always, I think most people, if you didn't know anything about Australia's position on this, I think most people would have guessed the opposite. That actually Australia had it right. They'd called this one out years ago, A man's a man, a girl's a girl, mate. It's as simple as that. And yet the controversy seems to be worse than it is here.
It is, and it's really ramping up. We saw in our Senate estimates, in our Parliament, the Sex Commissioner was asked whether a male can be discriminated against, a trans female can be discriminated against if they are able to become pregnant. Now, it was determined in this hearing just yesterday that that is possible. Now, I don't know how a biological male, unless I missed my education at school, can become pregnant. And this is what is problematic with our legislation.
Let's have a listen then to that clash in the Senate. Here it is.
Trans women who applies for a job, for example,
Yes.
and she may be asked whether or not she intends to have children. And if she replies, yes, I do, and then doesn't get the job because that employer doesn't want to employ women who may be of childbearing age, then she may have been subjected to unlawful discrimination on the basis of potential pregnancy.
I'm very confused. A biological male can't become pregnant.
But the grounds of pregnancy includes potential pregnancy as well as pregnancy.
But if they can't become pregnant, how can you then become potentially pregnant?
Someone who is a trans woman may be assumed to be pregnant or to be able to be pregnant.
Biological men, doesn't matter what way you cut it, you cannot get pregnant.
That is one of the funniest things I've ever heard. I mean, talk about a kind of Orwellian newspeak thing. I mean, you could be assumed to be pregnant, and as the was that the chair that who was
Sex Discrimination Commissioner?
Commissioner, the one that was advocating that a man can be...
She was explaining it, yes, with the dark hair.
Yes. Well, she was just lying, frankly, right? I mean, she was just... I mean, what she was saying was nonsense.
But this is a problem with our legislation, Ian. It doesn't, in the Sex Discrimination Act, it doesn't now, under Julia Gillard, the definition of a female and a male was removed. So it's ambiguous, and this is creating a lot of problems in Australia. And yes, it might seem funny to people listening to that, but this is incredibly serious because the ramifications now are very, very big in Australia. And many women in Australia, biological women, feel that their spaces are being encroached on by biological men. So this is hugely controversial, and that is why Julia Gillard has come under fire, because she allowed the change to the Act. And I will note that tennis champion Martina Navratilova...
She's been very vocal on this.
She's been very vocal on this, and she retweeted my story and said that Julia Gillard, she said, yeah, well, she deserves it, referring to her being heckled. This is incredibly serious, and Australia, some of the female athletes here I've spoken to are saying we look like a laughingstock.
I mean, it is quite crazy. People like Navratilova, J.K. Rowling and others, big high-profile names in this, in their own right, have kind of waded into this. When you... I mean, you almost want to meet the person, the equalities woman there, face to face and say, do you really believe this? This is garbage.
Well, I guess it comes back to the legislation, and they have to interpret this legislation. And this is the problem. So the coalition, the opposition in Australia has said if they win government, which they're Buckley's chance at the moment, they want to change it so it clearly defines what is a male and what is a female. But the ramifications for this are huge, and we really should be looking in Australia at what happened here with that Supreme Court ruling in Britain that has protected female women's spaces for biological women.
I was going to say this is something out of a sitcom, but Julia Gillard is from Barry, and we know that Barry produced one of the biggest sitcoms in Gavin and Stacey. So, you know, maybe there's a little correlation there as well. While you're with us, social media bans. Australia, you know, are leading the way apparently on this for teenagers, for under 16s. Sort of loose reports that some say it's kind of working, others not so sure about this. What's this sort of overarching view, Sophie? What's happening with Australia? Because you've sort of led the way a little on this.
We were the first government in Australia, in the world, to introduce this. And there was a big campaign by News Corp Australia pushing for this. We know it was implemented, the ban from under 16s from December. Kids are kids. They can get around things. So, yes, there are definitely children getting around it. The scrutiny is being on the tech giants that they are not doing enough to enforce the ban, and the penalties should be coming down on them. But it's still very much a work in progress because it's only 6 months in. But the thing is, in Australia, they're trying to protect children. Whether or not it should be banned or not is up to people's own viewpoints.
The difficulty, of course, if you want to watch some, for example, if somebody wants to go to my OnlyFans page, they don't have to go through, they can just go onto the internet. You laughed when I said that, Sophie, it's a good job I'm not insulted by this. But no, if somebody wanted to find something bad, is what I'm saying, you could just go to the internet, couldn't you? You wouldn't need social media.
Well, they can work around it. They can use VPNs.
True.
They can lie about their age.
Yeah.
Now, not diminishing what the government is doing, they are trying to protect children, but this is concern that the tech giants are not doing enough. And the tech giants can really do whatever they want because they are so massive.
Of course. The worry for others is that, when governments start banning stuff, where does it, can it creep into other, here's a bit of news we'd rather you didn't see, or whatever. That there is a sense that other things could eventually get pulled into similar legislation.
That's right. And look, there's been people who've argued that there shouldn't be a ban. We don't ban everything to protect people, but this is something that the government has tried to implement. They've had some success, but it has been met with challenges.
Listen, Sophie, it's great to see you. Thank you for coming. We were so impressed that we sent Tommy, one of our researchers, out to get you a little gift. We've got you a little guinea pig.
Oh, lovely.
To take away with you. Unfortunately, it was put in the same box as a funnel web, so there's not much left of the little guinea pig now, but
thank you, Ian.
You can have it with our love
Thank
and
you
care.
so much.
Sophie Ellsworth with us, News Corps Australia's Europe correspondent. This is Talk.
It's a nutty canister, either way. I mean, look at the nut.
Bob Odenkirk! Saul was great. He was just a breath of fresh air. Amelia Clark! Star Wars versus Game of Thrones.
Game of Thrones, definitely.
I'm
loyal.
Don't tell me. Alex Hassel!
In season 2, a lot of us get our clothes off.
You do know you did that in season 1?
Exactly, that's true, yes.
When conflict breaks out anywhere in the world, it has consequences here at home. Talk War is your definitive national security briefing. From the conflict in Ukraine to the tensions in Gaza and the latest escalation with Iran, this is where you'll find comprehensive comment and expert analysis with multiple updates throughout the day. The Talk War podcast from Talk, available on the Talk app or wherever you get your podcasts. across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk. Yeah, good morning. Welcome, Homer Commentators. Julia is here in around about 5 minutes' time. Stand by for that. We'll chat to her shortly. Lots to get through. For some reason, we've, amidst all manner of serious news out there, we seem to have majored on the tricky issue of guinea pigs, hot weather, and how to look after them. Here's a voice note from Tom. Morning, Tom.
Hi, Ian. Tom from Rugby. With regard to guinea pigs, some years ago, we had some friends who were returned missionaries from South America. When they were out there, they used to breed guinea pigs and then give a male and female pair to poor people. And the reason for this was they ate them. They bred them and ate them. Well, it's a funny old world. Cheers.
Thank you, Tom. I mean, that's possibly maybe a better use for a guinea pig. I don't know. I don't want to say too much because, you know, people might be guinea pig lovers out there. But yeah, probably a bit of a delicacy somewhere, like eating a lobster to some of us. On guinea pigs, here's Mike. Morning, Mike.
Morning, Ian. Michael from High Wycombe. Great show. Just to say that having travelled in Ecuador in South America, they eat deep-fried guinea pig there, and very, very tasty they are too. All right, cheers, bye.
Deep fried? So that's not your ordinary culinary guinea pig. We can do you guinea pig grilled. But if you really want a guinea pig, you've got to go deep fried, mate. They're absolutely tasty. Little whiskers in your teeth afterwards, beautiful. Bit of crackling on the back there, lovely little thing. And if you swallow properly, you get a little squeak. Nice. Let's go to more serious matters. Ben is in Lincolnshire on Reform and Restore and all things coalition related. Ben, morning.
Morning, Ian. How are you doing?
Good, thank you. Fire away. What have you got for us?
Yeah, I'm feeling quite peckish now after the last couple.
That's right. Well, deep fried is the only way to go. That's all I'm saying, Ben.
Absolutely. I don't know, barbecue in this weather.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I don't honestly think that Reform and Restore can ever come together at all. Maybe Advance will do something with Restore. I quite like Ben Habib. He does seem to have his finger on the pulse, but whether he'll ever become anything as a politician, I honestly don't know. But Nigel Farage, the way he's treated Rupert Lowe is just absolutely disgusting. And I don't trust Nigel Farage one little bit since he left UKIP. I think it's just pretty obvious for a lot of people to see that Nigel Farage is in it for Nigel Farage. He's just, everything's all sound bites for that bloke. I don't think he's going to do anything, whereas Rupert Lowe is possibly one of the hardest working MPs we've got at the moment.
Well, that's fair. That is fair, and he does work very hard. A lot behind the scenes. So I mentioned, how he's holding sort of accounting departments to account, as it were. But listen, Ben, thank you very much indeed for that. It is interesting how this debate does divide the room. Team Nigel, Team Rupert. Some think a coalition is a great idea. Others, it's the most abhorrent thing you could ever do. Brad, by the way, Brad's in Cambridge, says the Australian debate was pure Monty Python. We just played the clip there with Sophie. Julia, who broadcasts and feels very strongly on these issues, all the ones we've watched over the last few years, that's absolutely the best. That's getting... You cannot believe a human being said what she said.
Well, no, except of course, most of our politicians say the same. I still haven't heard Keir Starmer say that he was wrong. He was either lying or misinformed or delusional when he said that he thought that 99.9% of women didn't have a penis, but 0.1% did.
Well, I'm going to raise you a cervix, apparently.
You should raise me a cervix.
That was Lammy, wasn't it?
Can we please talk? Can we please talk about Tony Blair?
Tony Blair's back.
Can I just say he cannot keep? But you know what? He's still better than anyone else anyone else on offer in the Labour Party. And everything he's written in that essay is right. I mean, he's right. The only thing he's missed out on really is and then I basically opened our borders and immigration. Yes. If it wasn't for the immigration, and actually it was my chance to put everyone on the payroll on welfare, Gordon Brown. But on other